I'd like to call this meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same, as provided by law, but scheduled including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Newton. Here. Councilman Seaton. Here. Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
And Mayor Hache.
Here. Please stand for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving in the nation's armed forces and as first responders. Thank you. I move the bills, claims, and vouchers and statements of funds on hand as of April 30th, 2019 be accepted as submitted.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move that the Village Council minutes of February 6th, February 27th, March 6th, and April 10th, 2019, having been reviewed by the Village Council and now available in the Village Clerk's office, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Before we go into the proclamations, do we have representatives from a new business in town? Apricot Lane Boutique? You're here? Are you Lucille Coyle and Carrie Torelli? Come on up. Please tell us a little bit about your business and where you're located. Up to the podium.
Hi,
Make sure it's on. Is the microphone on?
Coyle. This is Carrie Torelli.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Could you just check to see if the green light's on? See the button? Is the green light on?
It is.
Okay, great. Just speak into the microphone. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll go first. So, yes, so we're opening an Apricot Lane boutique, which is a woman's boutique. It's a chain. It's a franchise. So what makes it, I guess, a little bit different is it's more of a mid-range price, a very approachable, customer service-oriented, a place where the mom and daughter can shop together. So there'll be outfits for acceptable for a mother and then the child or the daughter. We've 20-year-old, maybe 30-ish age range. So we're targeting, so we're going into the 111 East Ridgewood Avenue.
111 East Ridgewood, okay.
The old Learning Express building. We are targeted to open August 8th.
We're hoping for August 8th.
We're hoping for August 8th.
August 8th.
Yes, fingers crossed that everything goes smoothly.
And you have a website, you have a Facebook page, Instagram? Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, they're being generated now.
They're being generated now.
As we, our lease is being finalized, and as that goes along, it comes on with the social media as well. So all that'll be up and running soon. The Apricot Lane itself does also have its website, but ours specifically won't be for probably, I'd say, the next month or so.
Okay.
Am I not here? Can you not hear me? Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so also we've already reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, so they told us about a lot of things that the local businesses do together, so we're looking forward to that as well, and just, integrating ourselves in the community.
Perfect. And when you join the chamber, then we'll do the grand opening in August, and we'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
But thank you and welcome again to Ridgewood, to the Central Business District. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go on to proclamations. Councilman Seaton, Click It or Ticket campaign.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the safety and security of the citizens of the Village of Ridgewood and surrounding areas are vitally important, and whereas a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in motor vehicles on our roadways, and whereas the use of seatbelts in passenger vehicles saved an estimated 14,955 lives from 5 years old and older in 2017, and whereas regular seatbelt use is the single most effective way to reduce fatalities in motor vehicle crashes. Whereas the use of seatbelts is supported by the laws of the Village of Ridgewood, and whereas May 20th through June 2nd, 2019 has been selected as National Click It or Ticket Mobilization Enforcement Period, and whereas across the country, law enforcement officers will actively be participating in the mobilization to ensure all motor vehicle occupants are buckled up day and night to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes. And whereas increased enforcement of seatbelt laws coupled with publicity has proven to be an effective method to increase seatbelt use rates and decrease fatal crashes. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim May 20th, 2019 through June 2nd, 2019 as Click It or Ticket Month, Click It or Ticket mobilization, and urges all citizens to always wear seatbelts when driving or riding on our roadways.
Thank you. Councilwoman Walsh, Mental Health Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas West Bergen Mental Health Care was founded in 1963 as a child guidance clinic and today is a full-range community mental health center serving over 3,000 people a year. And whereas West Bergen Mental Health Care offers a wide range of services that are designed to meet the needs of people and families that it serves. And whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being. And whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens shares the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim May 2019 as National Mental Health Awareness Month and calls upon the citizens of the Village of Ridgewood to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, educate our citizens on the steps they can take to protect their mental health, and recognize the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions.
Thank you. Councilman Voigt, Gay Pride Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood recognizes the human rights of individuals everywhere and embraces the rights of all people to live their lives freely in a world that is accepting and respectful. And whereas for far too long, the members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning LGBTQ community have been marginalized, dehumanized, and demoralized for merely living in a manner consistent with our nation's fundamental beliefs of life, liberty, and freedom for all. And whereas sadly and regrettably, members of the LGBTQ community have faced prejudice and discrimination, and too many have had to hide or deny their sexual orientation in order to keep their jobs or to live safely in their communities. And whereas the Village Council recognizes that there are still many challenges before us, and we must stand together, firm in our resolve, to reject acts of prejudice and acts of hatred and violence against any person for any reason. And whereas senseless hatred, bigotry, and intolerance has no place in society, and it's incumbent that village leaders and all residents foster greater empathy, understanding, and caring for each other. And whereas members of the LGBTQ community have made important and lasting contributions to our village, state, and nation by enriching our lives and helping to encourage and develop a more inclusive and thoughtful world. And whereas members of the LGBTQ community include our acquaintances, our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, and our family members, and each and every one deserve respect, understanding, compassion, and the right to love whoever they choose. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood embraces all of our brothers and sisters, appreciating our similarities and celebrating our differences. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim June 2019 as LGBTQ Pride Month and encourages village residents to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities that celebrate our diversity and recognize the need to embrace all members of our community with love and acceptance.
Thank you. Only two more, I promise. National Cancer Survivors Day. Whereas today, 15.5 million Americans are cancer survivors thanks to advances in early detection, treatment, and research. And whereas surviving cancer can leave a host of problems in its wake, with physical emotional, and financial hardships, often persisting for years after diagnosis, treatment with challenges including access to cancer specialists and promising new treatments, denial of health and life insurance coverage, financial hardships long after the initial diagnosis and treatment, employment problems, psychological struggles, and the strain on personal relationships, and the profound fear of recurrence. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood has an active and productive cancer survivor population, demonstrating that cancer survivors can live active, productive lives, even though they still face many challenges. And whereas communities all across America will be celebrating National Cancer Survivors Day on Sunday, June 2nd, 2019, as part of the world's largest annual cancer survivor event. Now therefore be resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2019 as National Cancer Survivors Day in the Village of Ridgewood and urges all residents to join in this joyous celebration of life. Okay, so we have Councilwoman Walsh now with National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
Whereas each day 91 Americans are killed by gun violence and countless others are injured, with Americans being 25 times more likely to be murdered with guns than people in other developed countries. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is one of the highest responsibilities of the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, which is why support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas June 2nd, 2019 would have been the 22nd birthday of Hadiya Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later. To help honor Hadiya and the 91 Americans whose lives are cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 2nd, 2019 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadiya's friends who commemorate her life by wearing orange, they choose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, as orange is also a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands, as well as encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2019 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the Village of Ridgewood and encourages all residents of the Village of Ridgewood to support the efforts in their community to prevent tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives.
Thank you. Last but not least, Deputy Mayor Knudsen, Emergency Medical Service Week.
And before I begin, I'll point out that lining the back of the room are members of the Ridgewood Emergency Medical Services team. So everyone can Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care for those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas emergency medical service teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical service providers by titling EMS Strong Beyond the Call as the theme of the 2019 Emergency Medical Services Week. And whereas the theme of Emergency Medical Services Week will serve to educate the residents of the Village of Ridgewood about the EMS profession, which is a call to have responsibility to care for the community and for fellow EMS providers that doesn't end when the shift ends. And whereas the title, EMS Strong Beyond the Call, conveys an incredibly powerful message about the EMS profession and the honorable men and women who serve within it, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim the week of May 19th, 2019 through May 25th, 2019 as Emergency Medical Services Week and encourages the community to support Ridgewood emergency medical services, as well as their programs, ceremonies, and activities.
Thank you. And I'll ask my council members to please join me on the floor to present the proclamation to the EMS members. And I ask you all to come up, please. Thank you.
How are they going to use it over here?
Where to go?
Mike. Mike? Move in a little tighter. Mr. Mayor, could you move in a little? Move it a little tighter if you can. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, we'll go to public comments, not to exceed 3 minutes per person.
By the way, my wife is watching this on the channel. She gets no sound.
No sound?
So, no sound. So
Oh.
that anyway. Now I can start my 3 minutes. Rorick Halaby, 374 Evergreen Place. First, I should say, people like the EMS people recover my faith in Ridgewood. I get depressed by so much that's going on.
Sorry,
I look
Mr. Halaby, I'm sorry. Dylan, so apparently there's no sound at home through the feed. So we just installed a new system. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see those two cameras up there, two cameras here,
Interesting.
one camera here. It's called Swagit. So whenever anybody speaks, it directs the focus on the camera to that person, and then you can go back and be able to search key words based on what was said.
Is this on my time or yours?
No, this is on my time. Don't worry. Just making sure we're all set.
And we should thank Cynthia for alerting us because we wouldn't have known.
Yeah, we wouldn't have known.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it.
How will we know it's working?
Get a thumbs up from there. We do it?
Oh, good.
All right. I'm in.
Okay, good. Rorick Halaby, 374 Evergreen Place. This is an email I sent Mayor Hache on Sunday concerning the website. And in the email, I questioned the Deputy Mayor's response to my comments on the site. And I'd like to give a copy of my letter to Donna Jackson. I don't think she's here, so maybe I should give it to Heather Maylander. Just to complete the thing. Now, 3 questions I would like answered. When you open up the village website, what you see front and center is the announcement for the estate Visa prepaid card. How many people are using the card to pay their taxes? Does anyone have any question or answer? I believe not many, if any. And considering that by any measure, the card does not appear to make much financial sense to the user, Why do we keep on pushing it? Lastly, and not to be too paranoid, but I should ask, as part of my due diligence, does anyone in the village council or at village hall have any vested interest, financial or otherwise, in the success of the card? Thank you. So give you the...
Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Mary Davey, the Outpatient Director for West Bergen Mental Health Care, and I just want to offer our thanks for the proclamation that you gave today for May being Mental Health Month. I think it provides recognition of the seriousness of the needs and acknowledgement of the needs for mental health services for all of our residents. And I also personally want to just say thank you for the ongoing support and collaboration that we have with many of the departments within the village. It's both an honor and a privilege to work with them.
I just want to say thank you to you for being one of our newest members of Stigma Free in Ridgewood. So bringing your time, talent, and energy to that committee is really, we're very grateful for that. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Allard. I've lived in Ridgewood, New Jersey since 1991. My two children went to the public schools. They're proud graduates of Ridgewood High School. Over the years, I've gladly served this community. I volunteered for the Ridgewood Lacrosse Association as a youth coach, as well as the president. I was once the public...
Can I interrupt you for 1 minute? Is this about the lighting at Maple Park? Okay, I just want to make sure. Because any people who have comments about the lighting should do it during the public hearing for that portion of the meeting. That's the only reason I'm asking.
Not here for the lighting.
Okay, thank you.
Nope. So anyway, I was a public defender once here for the village. It was a great honor to serve. Before that, I was an assistant prosecutor for Bergen County during the 1990s. I'm currently in my 12th year as a public school teacher and as a 20-year resident of this town and as a person who has had the privilege of coaching our youth and now teaching young people. I think it's imperative that our council approve the request to fly the official LGBTQ flag at Village Hall. Other neighboring towns are doing this with no hesitation, and I wonder how we, the community that claims Tyler Clementi as one of our sons, refuse to recognize gay pride as something that would require the flying of the flag. In closing, I'll just let all of you know that the New Jersey Department of Education has recently, like as of February, requested and mandated that in the lessons and in the core curriculum, history teachers must teach the history of the LGBT community, similarly to the way we must teach the civil rights movement, the struggle for women, gender equality, and now the requirement, of course, to educate our students on the history of the civil rights of the LGBT community. What better way to support the teachers and the students in the schools by flying the gay pride flag? Please place the official gay pride flag on the pole this June, as I'm very glad that you declared that proclamation. Thank you. However, in the alternative, fly the flag outside of Village Hall, but in the alternative, if you see that you cannot do that, at least fly the flag and not a banner at Van Ness. So thank you for your consideration and my thoughts. And just in closing, I've been notified that you are considering banning plastic bags today. Is that correct? I would support that proposition as well. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Harris. I live at 625 Hillcrest Road, Ridgewood, New Jersey. I as well was just told about the plastic bag ban, and I would support that. And just as to note, Suffolk County, New York, just recently banned it as of last January, and within a year, they have gotten 1.1 billion plastic bags out of circulation. They banned the plastic, and it's a 5-cent charge for the paper, and I promise you, I do not forget my recycling bags. I'm actually here to request that you please fly the LGBTQ pride flag at Village Hall this year. I feel it's very important to show this support to all people in that community and our community who may or may not be in that genre. I feel that when we support one another, we make ourselves much stronger, And I also feel that something that simple as flying a flag can make such a tremendous difference. Those of you who know me, I've worked as a special education attorney and advocate, and many of my cases involve bullying. This is certainly a component that I've seen in the past 8 years. And I just wanted to read to you two very quick passages. One is from the Biden Foundation, and one is from the Institute of Medicine. From the Biden Foundation, they have found research shows that transgender youth experience greatly reduced anxiety and depression when they are accepted and affirmed at home, in school, and in their communities. Family and community rejection, coupled with lack of legal protections and a lack of anti-discrimination and anti-bullying protections in schools, means LGBTQ youth continue to be among the most at-risk youth populations in America. LGBTQ young people, specifically transgender youth, are disproportionately more likely to experience homelessness, experience discrimination and bullying in schools, suffer from depression, experience suicidal ideation, and these risks are exacerbated the more the transgender youth people experience rejection. However, through family and community acceptance and support, nurturing strong connections to people who care, and establishing a positive sense of identity as a transgender person, parents and communities can help foster and strengthen resilience. And then the Institute of Medicine just found that stress associated with these experiences, these negative experiences include high rates of physical and emotional bias and violence, rejection by families and peers, and inadequate supports in schools, employment, and communities because of their sexual orientation and gender identity expression. Again, there are so many negatives. I feel like this is a very simple thing, and it could be such a positive for so many people in our community, especially our young people. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Kelly Keene, and I live at 368 Vesta Court. I'm a longtime resident of Ridgewood, New Jersey. I've been here for 20 years, and I'm a 19-year teacher at Bergen Community College. And I'm here today to thank you, number one, for recognizing June as Pride Month. I think it's the right thing to do. But also, I think we need to raise the flag here at Ridgewood Hall. I think we need to show those colors bright and waving so that our children, our adults in our community feel welcome and they feel part of this wonderful community. I think we should follow the steps of Glen Rock, New Jersey, our neighbors just to the side of us, and we should fly the flag. If that is not possible this year, and I strongly hope that it is possible, I do hope that we fly it in a very prominent position in Van Ness Park, that we do not have a banner and one that was upside down last year, that we have a nice big flag that all can see. So I hope you'll take up the consideration, and I do thank you again, once again, for making June Pride Month. And also to the plastic ban, I support that as well. Thank you.
It's a biggie.
Hi, I'm Natasha. I'm a current junior at Ridgewood High School. I'm a member of the school's Gay Straight Alliance, and I'm here representing members of our community who could not be here today. We, as a community, are dismayed by the fact that we are not able to fly the Pride flag proud in town. Our community and the Pride flag itself embodies love and acceptance and extending kindness and support to everyone, no matter who you are. Flying the Pride flag shows to everyone that we, as a Ridgewood community, we espouse acceptance and support our fellow LGBTQ citizens. In my personal opinion, I feel that refusing to fly the Pride flag sends the message to the young and growing queer community at the high school and middle school that they are not accepted and supported by our fellow citizens. Though the LGBTQ community has made many leaps and bounds towards equality, we are still fighting for visibility and open support. Many in the queer community, especially students at the schools, feel invisible and fear being rejected for just being themselves. Flying the Pride flag in town shows to all members of the queer community, especially students still at the schools, that the Ridgewood community supports them, that we are visible, and that we are heard. Thank you for your time.
My name is Philip. I am a junior at Ridgewood High School. I am a member of the Gay Straight Alliance at the school, and I ask for a Pride flag to be flown in Van Ness Square so that every citizen of this town can be confident in the fact that they have, as enshrined in our Constitution, the full ability to express themselves freely, as well as equal protection under the law. Thank you.
Good evening. Steve Kim, 291 Highland Avenue. I'm here to talk about the library. We have an enviable library, and I think it's probably one of the best in the region. And yes, I agree that it needs to be updated. There's no argument there. The key word here is it needs to be updated. It shouldn't be upended. For example, carpet replacement, that's an update. Badge the floor to put a circular staircase, that's an upend. Retile, that's an update. Badge bathrooms and redo completely, that's an upend. Get new chairs, that's an update. Badge one end of the building to put 40 chairs and square things out, that's an upend. Reconfigure space and walls, that's an update. Badge roof to put in a skylight, that's an upend. What needs to be done with the library is a bit of an enigma because the library admins and the trustee never sought the opinion or the insight of the residents. The residents never got to say what they wanted. How do I know? Because Oprah requested the surveys in the past, and I looked through 250 pages worth of this stuff, and there's nothing that really truly asks, what do you want? It's not in there. So then the information I get is, well, you don't know because you're not a library expert, but I've been a reader for 50 years. Other people have been readers most of their lives, and we've been using the library for many, many years. And so in the end, so the residents who fund 95% of the library, they've been taken out of this process of rebuilding something that is so important to the community. And so when I looked through the Oprah request, the results of the surveys, the two information that I got out of it was, two bits of information was, people are generally happy with the library. Sure, there's, well, the carpet's a little bit dirty and this and that, but people are generally happy. I'd say about 80-90%. And the other thing that I realized is people were never given a choice to choose. Now, in terms of funding, I won't go through the numbers, but I'd like to talk about the Princeton Public Library. Why? Because the library development solutions, the main consultant there is the person who led the recent renovation of the Princeton Library. It's called To Reimagine, similar to ours, except it's the second phase of their effort to rebuild their library, and 96% of the cost was done with private capital with zero debt.
Thank you,
and
Steve.
I think that's the model that we should go after. Thank you.
Council, thank you.
Good evening.
Is the green light on? Could you just check? There's a button?
The base of the
microphone.
Okay, could you push the button? Push the gray button?
You're good, you're good.
Up higher, up higher.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Okay. So anyway, there's a crisis of hate in our country. There's a history of oppression against LGBTQ people, and the flag would be a statement that all people are created equal and entitled to pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. It's not a political statement. It's really a constitutional statement. And that Ridgewood, the flag being flown at Village Hall would show that Ridgewood stands for the protection and the constitutional rights of all of its citizens. If you can't see your way to Village Hall, can we have a real flag at Van Ness? And secondly, as to the plastic ban ordinance, I fully support this ordinance. As of April 22nd, 2019, 63 countries have instituted plastic bans. So it's great that we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Denise Fabiano, and I live at 618 Spring Avenue since 2006. First of all, thank you for declaring June Gay Pride Month. As part of Gay Pride Month, I would ask the council to hang the flag here to give the fullest weight to the message of inclusiveness that it's meant to send. Far from being a political message, it would be a representation of this village's position on the full inclusion and support of the LGBT community. The history of discrimination and violence against this group, which you recognize in the proclamation, has led to statistics that place suicide attempts by LGBT kids at 4 times the rate of straight kids. Many LGBT kids struggle with the feeling that they won't be accepted or like they're less than. If you fly the flag here, you're telling them that they're not less than. You're telling them that they have the full support of a town that stands with them, not as a political statement, but because of who we are as a community. Hanging it here tells them that they're not just tolerated, it tells them that they're accepted. Messages come from the top and trickle down to communities. Please send a message of full inclusion and hang the flag right here for them. While I'm up here, I just want to say thank you for the gun violence awareness proclamation, and also I'm against plastic bags.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Berry. I live at 348 South Irving Street, and I am here today to ask for you to fly the LGBTQ flag at the Village Hall. I'm an educator in Ridgewood for elementary school, and by 5th grade, I'm already seeing students demonstrate difficult feelings when they're starting to test their sexuality, and I have witnessed bullying, and I really do believe that putting the flag here would really help, even at the elementary level, these children start to feel included in the community. Also, I fully support the plastic bag ban. We are spending so much time in our science curriculum investigating how much plastic is corrupting our oceans. Our students are so upset by it, and this to me is one little step that we can take to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? At home? Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll close public comments. There was a question posed regarding the estate card and whether or not there's a vested interest from any of the members of the village council. Absolutely not. There's no interest. The villages are making money off of this. Nobody up here is making money off of this. The intent of the program was really to provide a way to put some purchase credits that you would get from a vendor towards your property tax liability at Village Hall. That's it. It doesn't cost the village any money either to keep it open, and it doesn't cost anything to keep it on the website either. So, all right, moving on with the rest of the agenda. Yes?
I have a question for the village manager. Relative to the flag banner upside down, did anyone ever notify us that the flag was improperly placed or upside down?
I personally was not notified. If we had been, we would have rectified that.
Yeah, okay, so we don't know that it was ever placed right, correct? Because we don't know that it was...
I don't know. This is the first time hearing of it, honestly.
Yeah, first time hearing of it,
So-
too. Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we have a
presentation
tonight by Bob Zoller from Musco Lighting. This is for the permanent lighting at Maple Park Field. If you'd like to come up, please. Welcome. Sit up, any other, yeah, whichever.
So funny. I know I'm sure it's working.
Yeah, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, this evening, I'd like to spend a few minutes with you just to address the concept of the permanent lighting for Maple Park East. When we met last Wednesday, we talked about the goals of the Parks and Recreation Department. One of those goals for me for this year is to take a serious look at the infrastructure within our park systems. I'd like to be able to restore and enhance certain park properties, including Kings Pond Park, restoring the North Monroe and the Bel Air tennis courts. We have recently just resurfaced the Maple Park turf. We have installed 6 new water fountains, 3 of which are bottle refilling stations, and we have worked with myriad service groups in the restoration of our gardens and our park properties. Most recently, we have focused our attention on Maple Park East. That facility has received a state-of-the-art, beautiful new turf as of the spring of last year. There has been serious entrance work in reworking that front garden to the park. There, we have 2 new water fountains, one being the water refilling station. We are now looking to you this evening for consideration to eliminate the 7 light towers, those temporary structures that are there, and to eliminate the environmental factors involved due to the noise, the fumes, and the spillage of light. This concept has been over a year in the works. We have discussed this at both the Fields Committee meetings, the Parks and Recreation Department Board, internally with department professionals, including the village engineer, Chris Rudishauser, Yelvana Mahenzik, the Signal Division, Finance, our CFO, and gratefully our village manager. Moving forward, the project estimate and the financial package that we have arranged would be that the project is looking at a price of approximately $430,000. We have been able to obtain $140,000 of this with the support of our youth sports groups. This evening, we hope to be able to seek your approval for a Bergen County open space grant for $145,000 and to be able to submit that grant as our 2019 submission. The Village of Ridgewood will also contribute $145,000 to this project. Within the process, as of last week, we have notified the residents within 200 feet of this site. 35 letters were mailed to our residents. The park has evolved since its dedication 35 years ago. When I first stood there with our previous director, Paul Angel, my eldest daughter, Sarah, who is 36, was 24 months old. So things have changed. That pasture land is now a multi-sport purpose field. We have trees where there were just shrubs. We've got a beautiful new entrance to our park where we commemorate and thank all of our residents that have dedicated so much to the village.
At this time, I would like to introduce Bob Zoller, who is the technical consultant with Musco Lighting. I don't know if you're familiar, but we have 3 of the Musco projects within the village. The very first was put in the 1970s at Veterans Field. The second is at the high school, and this hopefully will be his 3rd project. Bob?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Bob Zoller. I'm a technical consultant for Musco Sports Lighting. I've been involved in the sports lighting field for the past 20 years, and I've been involved in over 3,000 sports lighting projects throughout the northeastern United States. In the last 20 years, we've done over 1,000 sports lighting projects in New Jersey, so we've been able to provide sports lighting solutions that met both the needs of the participants, the athletes on the field, as well as being sensitive to those who are adjacent residents to the field. So what I'd like to do is just do a brief set of PowerPoint slides to just give you an idea of what we're planning, what we're providing as the lighting solution for Maple Park, and hopefully answer any questions that you have. The first slide shows a Google image of Maple Park. I'm sure everyone here is familiar. Maple Park consists of a baseball diamond that overlays a multi-purpose field that has lacrosse, soccer, football, field hockey, all of the sports that can be played on a rectangular field. It borders Northern Parkway to the east and Meadowbrook Avenue to the north. Now, let's first look at what is currently illuminating the field. Basically, the field is currently being illuminated by a set of portable towers that can be raised and lowered. Mind you, these towers are not designed to light a sports lighting field. They are designed for construction applications, to basically put an area of light in a small area, bright area of light, and you see them probably throughout wherever there's roadway construction projects going on. That's really what this type of lighting is designed for. Now, I went out to the field and I have drawn, and I apologize, my artwork is not the greatest, but I've drawn on this layout a rough location of the 7 light towers, which you've already heard about indicated. If I go clockwise, starting at the baseball diamond, there's 1 tower along the first base side of the baseball diamond, 1 tower along the third base line of the baseball diamond. Midway down the baseball diamond at about the midsection of the soccer field is number 3. And I wrote NG on there because when I went out to the field, that particular light tower was not operational. Tower 4 is down at the corner of the soccer field on the western side. 5 is also on the western side of the field. 6 is on the northern side, approximately halfway across about the midsection of the soccer field. And number 7 is in the western corner of the soccer field. Again, I put NG on there because that was also not operational at the time I was out there. I did a lighting audit of the field, and these are the lighting measurements that I made with my meter. Basically, looking at the baseball diamond, the infield at home plate, we had 1.5 foot candles and 2.9 foot candles at the pitcher's mound. Going along the soccer field, values varied from 13 in the southwestern corner of the soccer field, right in front of the 1 tower, tower number 4. In the northwestern corner, we have 20-foot candles, which was the highest reading I was able to measure. Down the center of the field, we had values that really varied from 2-foot candles to 0.7-foot candles. So basically, you have a very dark center down the field. You have bright spots on the field where the crank-up towers are, which is what is expected. And if you look up toward Meadowbrook Avenue, there is 1 street light, and that street light basically is right about central on the soccer field, and I measured that. The value underneath that street light is 0.7-foot candles, so you get an idea of how much light is there. If we look at the next slide, I took a picture. This is standing at the eastern soccer goal, just aiming my cell phone down the soccer field just to get an idea. We see 3 of the light towers. There's 4 lights per tower on the 3 towers. You can see the bright areas under the towers, which I'm told that's where The participants do their practices is under the light, under the towers. Down the center of the field, it's basically dark, as indicated by the values that I measured. So when we look at a lighting project, there's a couple pieces that are very important, and the first piece is the height of the poles. Now, this shows that with the proper height on the pole, the lighting fixture aimed downward, the line, the yellow line that goes from the lighting fixture to the center of the soccer field, and the soccer field is in green with the two soccer flags showing the two corners of the soccer field. What we see is with the proper height pole, a ball is illuminated as it flies in the air, ensuring safety and playability for the participants. And basically, these are all aerial sports that we're talking about with the exception of field hockey. And we see that the lighting beam is cut off before we actually get to the property line, the main beam itself. If we go lower on the pole, what happens is now we start to see that the light begins to pass beyond the edge of the field. We can see the light beam traveling beyond, and we can also see now we get into situations where the ball is traveling above the lighting, which can produce a safety factor. And if we go down to a very short pole, now again we can see a considerable amount of the light beam is going beyond the edge of the field, beyond the area we're trying to illuminate. For aerial sports, the Illumination Engineering Society, which is what we utilize as our guidelines for sports lighting, indicates in their what their publication called LM33, which is Lighting for Exterior Environments, Section 10 under sports lighting. It indicates that the minimum pole height required for aerial sports, baseball, softball, football, soccer, lacrosse, is 70 feet. So that would be the minimum pole height that they would recommend and the minimum pole height that we are going to propose on this project. So that is pole heights. The second is lighting control, which is taken care of by the actual technology of the reflector. If we start from left to right, 1997, we have just the pure floodlight, just a parabolic dish. And this is that construction light, exactly what you have. It's a floodlight. Light just goes out in all directions, everywhere. In 1988, and actually it's prior to 1988, it's a little bit earlier than that, but we have now added a faceted visor at the bottom of the fixture. That is the lighting fixture behind us here at Veterans Park. Moving along, we add different visors for external to try and block the view of the light source and reduce the amount of glare, also redirecting the light and efficiency and getting more light on the field, less light going beyond the field. The second from the right in 2005 is the lighting technology at the high school. That at that time was state-of-the-art, and by the way, Veterans Park, when it was installed, was state-of-the-art too back then. That is the technology that is at the high school, and the technology we show at 2013 is LED technology, which is actually the first full cutoff sports lighting fixture that's been available in this application. This is what the fixture looks like. The LEDs themselves are recessed up inside the fixture, and there's a large shield that covers the LEDs. So now you have a lighting fixture where you're actually not going to see the lighting source in the fixture, and you're not going to get that glare off the bottom of the fixture as we saw in the previous technologies we do have at the high school. Now let's look at the field. A 30-foot candle soccer field is what we are proposing for the actual soccer field itself. The 30-foot candle soccer field will require 4 light poles, as shown, 2 on the north side of the field, 2 on the south side of the field. They would provide a maintained average of 30-foot candles across the soccer field, which would permit play from any age, from the young athletes, the newcomers to the sports, if you would, all the way up to and including high school level play. Safe, playable for all ages to be able to utilize the field. And this is a picture of a 30-foot candle soccer field with the proposed technology. What you could see is you could see the smoothness of the field illumination. Also what you could see is the lack of glare from the lighting fixtures. Now, you will still see, if you have a visual view of the lighting fixtures where the buffer is light and you could still see through, you will see that there are lights there, but you will not see the glare that you have from the current lights, and you will also be able to look and not have any glare issues whatsoever. Now, the baseball field will be able to also be illuminated. There are also 4 poles on the baseball field. There are 2 poles that are common to both the soccer and the baseball. It's the first baseline pole and the pole on the northwest corner. So there are 6 poles altogether, 2 are common, and there are only 4 needed per field. The field will be illuminated to 50-foot candles in the infield, 30-foot candles in the outfield, which would allow play for any age, baseball, softball, again, from Little League or T-ball all the way up to and including. Actually, high school is probably too small for that, for baseball, but certainly softball would probably be able to play on the field. And here's a picture of a baseball field, again, with the proposed technology. You could see the lack of glare to the baseball field, and also you could see how quickly it goes dark around the field, the cutoff of the light around the field. Now, I put this slide in because on the left is the proposed LED technology. On the right is another LED technology. So just to say that you're putting LED technology on a pole does not mean that you have the control of lighting. It depends upon the reflector and the reflector technology. Benefits of the LED is instant on, instant off. Anyone who's played with metal halide lights, you know that if the lights go out, it's 20 minutes it takes for those lights to come back on. That's what we call a restrike time. With LEDs, instant on, instant off. This is a picture I took from Meadowbrook Avenue, and this is a picture looking at one of the towers that I was able to see through the trees, the existing buffer, and so I was able to take this picture just to give you an idea. Again, it's not shielded light, it's just floodlights, so you could see that impact as opposed to what I showed in the previous pictures. Now, let's put some numbers to what we're talking about here. What we've done is we've calculated what the horizontal foot candles would be along Meadowbrook Avenue on the neighbor side of Meadowbrook Avenue, also along Northern Parkway, and forgive me, the next road over from Northern Parkway? Rose Court, thank you, Rose Court. If you look at the values, and I apologize, they're very small, the green value, which is directly above the central line of the soccer field, is 0.1 foot candles. 0.1 foot candles is basically moonlight, and these values are calculated without taking into account any blockage from the trees whatsoever. These are calculated assuming there's no tree buffer, nothing there. There's a couple of values along there that are 0.1 foot candles. The rest of the values throughout all of this are 0.0. The picture that I showed you of the tower, the existing tower on Meadowbrook Avenue, I took a light reading of that. That light reading was 0.09, or basically 0.1 foot candles. So essentially, it's the same. So we're going to be able to increase the light level 30 times on the field with this technology without increasing at all, and probably decreasing, because now we will not have the glare situation that we do have, the spillage and the impact, especially to the most adjacent residents along Meadowbrook Avenue. Also, in addition to horizontal foot candles, and let me just share with you, horizontal foot candles, basically you hold the meter parallel to the ground. That's the standard, because basically whether anyone in this room was out to take horizontal foot candles, we could do it. We can hold the meter parallel to the ground, and we can reproduce those values. Now, light traveling from that field toward our adjacent neighbors is really not traveling horizontally, it's traveling vertically. So now we're going to take the meter and we're going to orient it vertically back to the field. And now we see that 0.1 foot candles, where the green value still remains the same, and it goes to 0.2 foot candles. It's only 1/10 of a foot candle more. There's a few more values along Meadowbrook that are 0.1. Again, no tree blockage, no buffer, no nothing. This is as if nothing was there. And those are the spill values. Rose Court, Northern Boulevard, in both cases, there's nothing. 0.00. And then lastly, the question was posed to me, can you please explain what the cost would be to operate the lights? Basically, when we talk about cost of lights, there's 2 things that come into play. The first is the energy cost, which is the generation and the transmission of the electricity that's required to power the lights. Typically, I find that it's roughly about 10 cents per kilowatt per hour that a utility throughout New Jersey is going to charge. Could vary, but that's pretty much average of what I see. So I'm going to assume that that's the value here for this park. The second, number two, is the demand charge. Now, demand charge goes all over the place. I haven't found a utility yet that has given me a really good understanding of how they actually calculate and come up with what the demand charge is. Demand charge, by definition, is a single charge based upon the peak usage in a given month. So in a given month, whatever that peak usage is, they base that demand charge, it's X amount of dollars per kilowatt for that peak usage. Now, I'm going to assume $5 per kilowatt because that's actually that's a little more on the conservative side. I've seen everything from 0 to 1 to maybe 6 is the highest I've ever seen. I'm going to take 5, number one, because it's easy for me to work with on the math perspective. And also, I see that more than anything else. So if we look at soccer only is going to utilize 30 kilowatts of light to operate the lights, the 4 poles that light the soccer field. So if we take 30 kilowatts times 10 cents per kilowatt hour, the hourly cost to operate those lights would be $3 per hour. Now, the demand cost, which is $5 per kilowatt, we take that times 30 kilowatts, so it would be a one-time cost per month of $150 in a given month. Now, that cost is whether you turn the lights on the 30th of the month or the 1st of the month. It's that time during that entire 30-day or 31 calendar day month, peak usage. Baseball only, same principle, 26 kW, it's a little bit less. We're talking about $260 an hour, $130 for demand. If all lights were turned on at once, worst case, and you might have something where for some reason you need everything illuminated, so I give you these values. It's 56 kilowatts, hourly cost $560 per hour, demand cost $280 per month. So I gave an example. Let's assume the soccer field is used for 100 hours in a given month, which is quite realistic, 3-4 hours a night, 6 nights, I don't know, that's typical. That would be probably in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 hours per month. So the 100 hours would be 100 times the $3 per hour for energy, which is $300 for the month, plus the one-time demand charge of $150. So the total cost would be $450 for that month to operate the soccer lights. And if we divide that by the 100 hours, basically the cost is $4.50 per hour to operate those lights. Now you'll notice that I don't put maintenance costs on this chart. The reason I don't do that is because the lighting system comes with a 25-year parts and labor warranty along with it. So for 25 years, if anything fails on the lighting system, it is covered by warranty and is replaced, parts and labor complete at no cost to the township. And then lastly, this project comes with the same wireless controls as we have at the high school, where we're not worried about somebody turning on and off switches or forgetting to turn lights off, or they don't have to turn all the lights off before they're able to exit the field. This way, the lights are set automatically through a wireless system. They go off when they're supposed to go off, and this way someone can exit, people can be off the field before the lights go off and before it goes dark. So that is kind of in a nutshell, I hope I didn't go too long, what we're proposing for the lights at Maple Park. And if I can answer any questions that you have, please feel free.
Thank you. Start with Councilman Cedar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very thorough. It answered a lot of questions I had about spillage and the height of the lights and the difference between higher and lower light poles and everything else. So I guess the only question I really have is probably for Nancy. About how tall do you think the trees are around that field?
I don't know, Michael.
I'd say maybe 60 to 80 feet.
Probably.
Probably around there. All right. That was it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
So that was actually my question, how tall are the trees? So, yeah, okay.
I would venture to guess, my guess is being out there, I know that the tallest of the portable lights is about 30 feet. So I'd say they're probably 60 to 70 feet. You're probably in about that range.
So did you say the portable lights are about 30 feet?
They are made to go up to a height of 30 feet. Some of them are at 30 feet. Some of them are a little bit lower based upon where they're located. That was what I was told when I was at the field. And
Okay.
I could see that they're not all at the same height myself.
I could be wrong. My recollection from our last meeting was that they were 45 feet. So 40 feet. So 30 feet adds another. So my initial thought on that, asking that particular question, how tall are the portable lights, it was relayed, conveyed to us that they were 40 feet. And so 40 feet to 70 to 80, but now 30 feet is actually exacerbating that even more. The one question, when you talked about the Meadowbrook slide, I was trying to keep a slide count so I could tell you where to go back to, or ask you to go back to a certain point, but on that Meadowbrook, well, actually, you could go right back ahead where it says moonlight. The moonlight,
okay, yes.
the moonlit, okay, there we go, moonlit night. When we talk about moonlight or less, is that a full moon? Is that, a
Full
crescent moon? So that's
Full moon.
a full moon,
Yes.
okay.
When I was taking the measurement of the previous slide, when I was out there and I measured 0.09 foot candles, it was I had to make sure that I got my meter aimed back at the street light because I couldn't read my meter to read that value. I guess another part to that is typically the safety factor for light is 0.5 foot candles. If you have less than 0.5 foot candles and there's an object in front of you, there is a good chance that you might trip over that object. That's why, for instance, the residential street light that's out there is illuminated to 0.7 foot candles. That 0.5 is typically like a minimum threshold level of what you would see in a neighborhood illuminating sidewalks and walking areas.
Okay. So I guess my question goes back to that tree line.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that, outside of this building it's pretty dark, but people across the field can see that the room is lit up. And I guess my question is, doesn't that disturb people if the light's on Monday through Saturday or whatever day? I don't recall how many days Nancy said it would be on and until what time, but people still see the light. They still see a glow, regardless of that definitive point where the light no longer spills beyond that, but they're still going to see a glow. Would that be accurate?
Well, you won't see a glow above the field because these lights are full cutoff fixtures. There is no light aimed above the lights. There's no light coming off the tops of the lights. So you wouldn't see that glow over the field, the sky glow. My opinion is the fact that it's actually going to be better for two reasons. I mean, you have the tree buffer there. That stays the same. Nothing's getting touched on that. And as I walked along the tree buffer, I couldn't see a whole lot of places where I could see light coming through the trees because when I went last night, and it's very covered. There's a lot of leaves. What I can say is that in places where light could come through, with the measurement that I made, it should be equal or less as far as the measurement. And I would say it's better because now you're not going to have the picture that I had showed here, where now you're going to have shielded fixtures that are not going to have that bright, glary look where you can see light coming through the trees. Now we're directing it down instead of across. With it being so low, as my picture illustrated, you're directing the light across, not down. And so I believe it would be better, and considering the fact that we're going to improve the lighting on the field so many times and still maintain and actually make something better, I would think it would probably be a beneficial condition for both the athletes and the neighbors at Meadowbrook Avenue. That would be my opinion.
But still, we can't really, I guess we really wouldn't understand the impact if we don't know the height of the tree line, because the lights are still above. They could.
I can answer that really good for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. What you have is a very good condition in that if this is the home on Meadowbrook, okay, the biggest home on Meadowbrook Avenue is 2 stories that I saw. I don't think I saw a 3-story home on Meadowbrook Avenue. That means the highest window here on the 2nd floor of somebody in their bedroom is going to be about 20 feet above the ground, okay, give or take, okay? The tree line is the distance of the front yard and the roadway, which is approximately, would you say maybe 30 feet, 40 feet or so? Now, if you have even a tree that's, if I'm saying this is 20 feet, now I have a tree here that's maybe 50 feet or 60 feet, and I'm only 30 feet away, you'd have to be looking way up to go over the trees just because they're so close to one another. If there was a long distance here and this house was way over here and you didn't have the trees close by, when you look at it from geometry, what you would see is then you might have a better chance at seeing the light. But because you're so close, your tree line's so high compared to where you are in such a short distance, it's beneficial because you still are going to be, from that line of sight, you're going to be over the tops of the poles at 70 feet because they're going to be looking at the poles on the opposite side of the field.
So even if somebody were laying in their bed with the blinds open, wouldn't they be looking out the window?
They'd still be having to look through the trees
right.
at the lights. They would
Okay.
not be looking above the trees. The lights would not be seen above the trees.
Okay. I'm good for the moment.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Thank you. Could you do me a favor and go back a couple to the field, to the illuminated fields? Yeah, yeah, all right. So, how tall are the light stanchions in that?
On this one, the light stanchions are 70 feet.
So 70 feet is what you guys are proposing, correct?
There's going to be 180 and 570s. And the only reason for the 180 that's a little bit taller is because we have to spread light a much bigger distance. And we want to maintain the shielding angles of the fixtures with regard to lighting control.
Okay, so this is on a full-size baseball field.
This is a baseball field that is 225 feet. So it's basically the same size. I tried to get as close to a picture as I could of what we're looking at in terms of the lighting.
Okay, and then could you go back to the soccer field? Sure. So you said these were 30-foot lights.
No, these are also 70-foot.
Oh, those are, okay, so then, yeah, it says 30-foot.
That's 30-foot candles means the amount of light on the field.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
those
FC stands for
poles
foot
were 30.
candles.
Okay.
And that's the amount of light on the field.
You did have a slide that had the lower lights, didn't you?
Well, I had to illustrate the light beam, I showed shorter poles on this illustration. But I didn't have, the only picture I had of 30-foot lights was the picture I took from the actual Maple Park.
Okay, so just a couple quick questions. Just in the interest of the public, you said you sent out 35 letters, and when did we send those? Because our meeting was only last week, so when did they?
On Friday.
They went out on Friday, certified? No. Okay, so letters went out. We know that everybody received them. Yeah, it was a short, I mean, I know that the deputy mayor made a big point of making sure that people were notified. So I see a couple of the neighbors, but
I have a list, if you'd like
Okay.
to see the list of the documented list that came from Michael Barker, the tax assessor.
Okay. Okay. And then did we receive any responses from those letters? Did you get any emails, or did the village manager get any emails from those letters, like response one way or the other?
I didn't receive any emails. I did receive a telephone call from one of the neighbors across the street. I had a visit from another one of the neighbors. I had another visit, and there are residents that are here tonight to speak.
Okay.
So I know that the letters did get out because
Okay.
they're in the audience.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure, because I know that was a big question last week, and I know that the last time around, many of the neighbors back at the high school had said that they felt that they weren't notified as well as they could have been.
That's what we were instructed.
Yeah, okay. So based on the conversation you just had, then, so Meadowbrook, and if we go back to the little diagram, the Meadowbrook where you have the streets.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Foot candle, sorry. So, okay, so Meadowbrook that has the trees, I understand your analysis there. But then if you go to Rose is further away, and it doesn't have, Mooning Park is, there's a couple of trees there, doesn't really have any growth in the middle. Then you have a parking lot, a couple of cedar trees along the buffer there, but It sounded from your conversation that Rose would be impacted more than Meadowbrook.
No, actually, we have no values either horizontally or vertically at Rose, because if you look at the orientation of the field in relationship to Rose, okay, Rose parallels the short side of the soccer field. So basically, it's basically traveling north-south, okay? Now, the field lights themselves on the two poles that are adjacent to Meadowbrook Avenue, those lights are aimed on the field, so they're aimed to the south. The two poles that are on the long side of the field furthest away from Meadowbrook, they're aimed to the north. The two poles that are adjacent to the baseball infield are aimed down to the baseball infield, and the one pole that's on the short side of the soccer field is aimed toward the west. So there's actually no lights on this field whatsoever that are aimed in the direction at all of Northern Parkway. Thank you. I keep thinking Northern Boulevard. I don't know why. Northern Parkway, and we're at all zeros at Northern Parkway. So when we get to Rose Court, we're even further away.
So then, and I can't remember for the life of me, there's no other illumination on the parking lot there that would add to this lighting? There's no other,
I don't believe so.
Yeah, there's no, are there any?
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, is there anything in the parking lot? There's no lights in the parking lot at all? And there's no lights in that section along Northern Parkway on the side?
Street lights there might be.
So there's just street lights, but there's no other lighting?
No.
There's no other municipal lighting there, okay. That's all I had for now.
Councilman Boyd?
Thank you, Mayor. So based on the estimates for the electricity costs, it looks like this is going to be anywhere in additional costs to the village of about $5,000 to $6,000 per year. Is that right? $450 a month times 12, that's $5,400, and so whatever the use is probably between $5,000 and $6,000 a year.
Is it additional or the total cost? Because the lights now are not free, right? The generators cost money, so this is not additional. This is just the expected cost of the lights, not additional.
Correct.
Right? The generators now, they're what, diesel powered, gas powered?
Yeah.
That has a cost. This is not above that. This is just the cost.
In lieu of.
In lieu of. Okay, so what are the generators costing us per year? Do you have any idea?
I don't. I'm
yeah.
sorry to say. I know that they're filled
They're
regularly.
probably more than $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Yeah?
I would have to get that answer for you. I don't know the cost
okay.
of diesel.
There's a hand back there, but there's public comment. There's public, yeah, that'd be helpful just once you, good. And so the resolution says that if we don't get the match, okay, it's we're going for 145 match. So the county says they don't want to give us anything. I'm just supposing. I'm just supposing, okay. It does say here in the resolution that if it's less than that grant amount, that the village will secure the balance of funding necessary. So it could be, I'm saying worst case scenario, let's suppose we get nothing, okay. The village is on the hook for $290,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's known. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
May I ask another question?
Thank you.
Another
Question?
Nancy, I'm sorry. I think last week and just now I wrote down that you stated it was $140,000 from each of those entities. I just wrote it down when you said it.
Correct.
But the resolution says 145, so there's a $15,000 difference. Am I?
5,000. 140 to 145, that's 5,000.
I'm
sorry. 3,140.
So, right. Mr. Rogers was correcting my math, I think. But my math was right. Okay. So you did say, I just wrote down, I'm trying to pull it back up on here. You just stated 140, and I had that number in a circle around it last meeting as well, but on the resolution it says 145. Can you?
I don't have I have to look at the copy of the resolution. It is $140,000 from the youth sports groups.
So what is that, just again, so I understand, what was the total amount of the project?
$430,000.
So I think I just need
It's
an
in the memo that I sent you, the cover memo. So I say in the memo, the project estimate is $430,000, was determined inclusive of the purchase and installation of the complete system, shared electrical power to the site, and fees associated with such, required permits, incidentals, and a 5% contingency. The funding arrangement consists of $140,000 from the youth sports groups, $145,000 application to the Bergen County Open Space Grant, and $145,000 from the Village of Ridgewood.
Okay, because I just wrote down that earlier you said 140 from the sports groups and 140 from VOR. I just wanted to check my notes.
No, you're right.
Okay, so it's 145 from the village.
145
Correct.
from the village and 145 matching grant.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, okay, all right.
Any questions?
But okay, I'm good right for the moment.
So thank you, by the way. I think it's a very thorough presentation. I just have one question because I've driven up to that field at nighttime, and I guess with the benefit of having the spillage from the lights are there now, I can see what's happening in the parking lot. I can kind of, be able to park and pull out, not a problem. With these lights being installed, they're a lot more efficient and less spillage of the leakage of the light. Is that going to require maybe some more lighting or reflective, something on that parking lot? Because it would appear then that the parking lot would be completely dark.
We could do a quick study of that and see exactly how much light we'd have in the parking lot.
Well, that would add to then the overall cost of this project, because if we now have to start adding lighting to the parking lot, now
Well, there is no lighting there now, so this would be a consideration for another park improvement as we move forward, or a discussion at a later date.
But I think that this is an important conversation as we're here right now, because we've notified the neighbors that we're looking at these lights, and if it's accurate to state that the current lighting is spilling into the parking lot and that is allowing people to go safely to their vehicles, then, and now we have lighting that there's no spillage, now we have to look at something else that will impact the neighbors. So now we're talking about a tree line. We don't know how tall the trees are. We don't know, compared to the trees, how tall the lighting poles are. And now we're going to add into that mix parking lot, lighting for a parking lot, to ensure the safety of pedestrians entering their vehicles. I mean, whether it's just, physical safety from,
So in the past, I know the way that it's worked is that the athletes are finished and the coaches are waiting till the athletes are off the fields and are with their parents before the lights are turned off. So that would have to be a similar situation that we program now with the lighting, was that the games will be done at 8:45 with the light closures at 9.
Right, but in other words, if the lights have no spillage into the parking lot, there's no lights.
There's enough. I believe Bob testified that it would be similar in the parking lot to a street light with the 0.7, right? Is that what you shared?
Well, I said the street light at Meadowbrook was 0.7, but I did not do any light values in the parking lot of how much light there is there.
Is there any light in the parking lot?
I don't know. I did not look at that.
Okay.
I'd have to look at that and see.
I mean, certainly if we're looking at the configuration of the baseball and soccer field and the proximity to the parking lot, then based on what your testimony or whatever your statements were, then there is no spillage into the parking lot. In theory, there shouldn't, because if there's spillage into the parking lot, then there's spillage into the neighbors' homes. That's a given. And as a matter of fact, I think you just told Councilwoman Walsh with her question about Looning Park and the lack of trees. Was it Councilwoman Walsh that asked that same question? You said that there was no spillage, so in reality, there can't be spillage into the parking lot either. Would that be fair?
Well, again, I have not looked at that.
Right.
I do remember when I went into the parking lot last night, there's not as large of a tree buffer. There are some larger gaps in the tree buffer along the parking lot. And what we do in a lot of cases and can do, and I can look at it, I just have not looked at it up to this point, we do have 2 lighting poles that are in relative proximity to the parking lot, and we can look at the potential of using the same full cutoff technology possibly on 2 of the lighting poles and just projecting just enough light into that parking lot, especially since we don't have the same condition that we do on the northern side with Meadowbrook Avenue. We do have the park, I believe, that's between Rose Court and the parking lot.
Ballooning,
So
yes.
therefore, if we were to utilize possibly 1 fixture or so, and again, I'm speculating, we would need to look at it, calculate it, and make sure. But it would be a relatively small cost to add 1 additional lighting fixture to possibly those 2 poles that are on the east side of the field adjacent to the parking lot, potentially putting some light into that parking lot and into where the brick area is that one would walk into the field.
So the parking lot is probably about maybe 40 feet wide. It's quite narrow because it's
Yeah,
just
it's
enough
very
for
narrow
2
parking
cars.
lot.
So we're also not talking about requiring a 70-foot pole to do that. You'd be talking to something that's
Well,
much lower.
the lighting fixture would be much lower
Much
on
lower,
the pole.
right.
It would not have to be at
Right.
the top of the pole. It would be lower enough. Again, it would be designed to be low enough so that it's lower on the pole and it's illuminating the area that we're
Sure.
trying to illuminate. Because a parking lot, your visual task is at most 6 feet above the ground.
Right.
So we don't have to light high. It would just be something to illuminate the pathway and illuminate your ability to walk to your car, be able to put a key in there and turn your door lock safely to be able to enter your vehicle.
But if you're adding those lights then to, let's just say, for argument's sake, the 70-foot pole, and you're adding it at a height that it needs to reach to that parking lot based on the proximity, then your foot candles are totally off because your whole, that changes the whole program because that distance from the homes would actually illuminate more because the lighting has to be angled to the parking lot, no?
But the poles wouldn't change. The poles remain at 7.
No, the poles
field.
wouldn't change, but you have a fixture now. Now you have another fixture attached to that pole, 2, what we just said were 2.
On the
Those
back
poles
side
are
of the
on
pole
parking
to
lot.
the parking lot.
Not poles on the field, poles on the parking lot.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
If you're looking at I'm looking at the vertical spill drawing for what's sake, and forgive I can't see very well at this distance, but there are 2 poles on the east side there, the one that's midway on the soccer field, and then the one that's on the first base side of the baseball field. And we would look at those 2 poles to see if we could add a fixture which would be directed very directly into the parking lot and being able to capture that brick pathway that you walk in, the brick pathway, and just provide safety in that area. That's something we would calculate and photometrically calculate in the same way, and we would make sure that there was no impact whatsoever in Rose Court.
2 entrances, so there's only 2 lights then, because there's 2 entrances to the field, 2 pathways to the field.
We would get whatever we would have to get. That's why I'm projecting to you it would be calculated and generated just like we've done everything else.
Got it.
Right, I actually did understand this. For a second I thought I misunderstood, but I did understand exactly what that was. So in other words, in order to reach those distances, wouldn't the fixture have to be up higher? Is that fair?
The height of the fixture will be determined by the distance
It
of
has
the
to
area
reach.
to and the area that we want to illuminate.
Right.
That would define that, correct.
And so if the fixture is at the height determined by the area that you need to reach, then that extends the foot candles out and what somebody's visual impact would be.
No, because it's still facing down, and it's now at a lower pole height, because you don't need a 70-foot pole to light up a parking lot.
It would still be a full cutoff fixture. So you would not see, again, the light source inside of the fixture. You wouldn't see it. You would see the illumination on the parking lot, and you might get some spillage into Northern Parkway, but it would end somewhere in that area.
So the other question is, why does it have to be a 70-foot pole and not a 40? Because you wouldn't have the
Well,
reach.
all we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate putting another pole up and taking advantage of the fact that we would have 2 70-foot poles there already. The height doesn't have to be at 70 feet of this to just light the parking lot. We would bring it down lower and put it at a height that would be what's needed to light the area that's being
But on the field, right, I mean, it seems like it's a lot of field for a few poles. If you went with shorter poles, you would require a lot more poles to cover as much because the light is so focused down that you wouldn't need.
Well, the problem is
Right.
if you went with shorter poles, you'd have a situation that you do now. My picture shows you have dark down the middle of the field. You can't reach it.
Right.
And that's the problem. That's what generates, like I said in the very beginning, the pole height. You have to reach a certain distance. You're reaching 150, 200 feet to get that light to the center of those fields. And that's what projects, and still being able to project it downward, not across as it's being done now.
So
And you have to get that light out there.
So if you're talking about a 70-foot pole for 150-foot distance, do a little geometry here. If we bring that pole down to 20
Bring the
feet.
fixture down on the pole.
Right.
And if you're only lighting 60 feet, you may be at 30 feet. You may
Right.
be at 20 feet. That would be I don't know.
Which is
I'd
probably
have to
width
calculate
of the
that.
parking lot, correct.
That's correct.
One last question. I'm sorry, unrelated, but I actually emailed earlier today asking for the scheduling.
That was sent to Heather at 4 o'clock.
Oh, did I get that? Oh, maybe I missed the email. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Just one other question. I'm just trying to think of all the times I've walked down there at night. So Graydon Lot is lit. The Graydon Lot has lights. So maybe I'm thinking of a spillover from the Graydon Lot for the middle part of the parking lot. So instead of putting, higher lights there, if you put, like the
Security
decorative
lighting.
street lights that we have
Right.
in the CBD, if you put one of those at the walkway there, would that, how much would that illuminate the parking lot for safety, for people getting in?
I would be honest with you, I think that this is something that the village engineer should look at.
Yeah, okay.
This is their area of expertise. Security lighting is something that they
Yeah.
would be able to study. We do have an electrician on staff.
Yeah.
So I think that, after tonight, we can definitely draw that to their attention. I need to go there myself at night and see, walk along the PSE&G right-of-way and study the security lighting. I haven't focused on that. We've been focusing on the sporting aspect
Because I
of
think
it
the
right
lighting
now.
from Graydon, the big Graydon lot, does spill over so that you have just a small section.
Right.
Yeah, where it's not lit. So it might be more cost effective to just put one of those decorative street lamps, along just past the walkway there, and that would light that area, and it would be more ambient, wouldn't be so high.
And those were installed by the Signal Division?
Yeah, so that is an option. And they would look nice there, too. So, thought,
We'll look
maybe
into
to talk
that.
to Chris about. Yeah, that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks again. Thank you, Nancy.
Could I just ask one question of the scheduling? It doesn't change from what it is now, right, for the evening? Because right now, my understanding is that the fields are full at night. And so there's really no other times that it would continue because you have lights out at 9 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
So it's not like you could add more schedule at night because it's already full.
It's already used, correct.
Right. Okay.
So just so the reason I asked for that is because I went through the 2006 and maybe 2004 meeting minutes, and there was a representation that the scheduling wouldn't increase by field improvements, and that the only reason there would be any additional scheduling was in the event of inclement weather prohibiting use of another field. So I was interested in knowing whether or not over the years the field use has or hasn't increased, and whether or not that was, I guess, kept to that statement. And that's the only reason. I was just interested in understanding better.
I didn't bring those documents.
That's all right.
with me.
I have it printed if you want to look at it. I have one copy. I got it tonight when I came back. So if you want to look
You know
at
what,
it.
I'll look at it. I'll
Okay.
look at it tomorrow. It's
Okay.
fine. I just was interested in understanding how, if it had changed over the years.
They're blocked. All of the way that the scheduling works is that those time periods are blocked. So whether it would be the Ridgewood Lacrosse Association or the Ridgewood Soccer Association, they're given out in time blocks.
So I guess that the representation that it won't increase is accurate. If you're already at maximum capacity, it can't increase.
Correct. Yeah. That's my understanding. And then let me just ask two more questions. So the other question I had is currently with the generator, is it a gas generator?
They're diesel.
Diesel. So you need to put diesel fuel into it. So there's a cost there, right?
Absolutely.
In addition, it has a noise, correct?
Yes, they're rather low.
From the generator.
Mhm.
And do these lights have these permanent lights have any kind of noise coming, buzzing or anything?
No, only the old metal halide lights. As they got older, the ballast would start to hum, and you hear that hum. With the LED lights, it's basically almost a little computer, the driver that's on the pole. There's no mechanical components. There's no noise.
Okay, and then is there a smell coming off of the generator because of the diesel fuel? And I'm assuming with LEDs, there's no smell.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Proposed permanent lighting on Maple Park Field was discussed at both the May 1st, 2019 work session and this evening. A public hearing on the permanent lighting on Maple Park Field is required due to the fact that the village is submitting a grant application for this project to the Bergen County Open Space Trust Fund. The public hearing this evening is specifically on the improvements to the permanent lighting on Maple Park Field. And the village council will listen to comments from the public specifically on this matter. The public hearing is now open.
I just asked you to state your name and address. Are we having a time limit or no?
Yeah. 3 minutes.
3 minutes per person.
3 minutes? Okay. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Moskowitz. I live at 257 Rose Court. I've lived there for, well, in August it'll be 29 years, and I've lived in Ridgewood since 1986. Yeah. All right. So I look directly across Rose Park, from Rose Court through Lunig Park at the light, and I will concede that the lighting impact will probably be improved by increasing the height of these light fixtures, the direction of my limited knowledge of physics and the way lights work. Yes, I can understand that. I will not see as much light at night coming from those fixtures. I also know that when and I've lived in town long enough to see that field go from a vacant, empty field to being used as a grass field, a turf field, an illuminated field, and in the wisdom the board has put limitations onto the growth of that field. I didn't buy a house next to City Field, although I like the Mets, I didn't want to live next door. One thing I can't get a grasp on, and again, there's been tremendous improvement in LED-style lights over these other lights. I still have to look. I don't only live in my house at night. I don't only see lights at night. I have to see the light fixtures, these billboards. I don't know how large these lights are. Are they 8 feet wide by 4 feet high? The dimension of these lights I will see when I'm gardening in my yard, when I look across the park. Instead of the bucolic scene that I've seen for years, I don't see the lights that are currently there at all. I do see them at night when I'm having dinner. Sometimes if I look out in that direction, I'll see a little glare coming through. But I don't see during the day large billboard-sized light fixtures. I don't know the dimensions of these. 70 feet high to me, just common sense tells me they have to be above the tree line. So I question the size of these light fixtures. How much will I see during the daytime, not just at night? That's of concern to me as well. And if I can illuminate the town, my impression when I look across the park, I know there are street lights on Northern Parkway, and those street lights do illuminate that parking area. I think that's where that residual lighting is coming in. And I also believe at the end of the pathways by the park, there are some stanchions with light fixtures on top of them as well that illuminate the pathways. So as far as do we need more poles to illuminate the parking area, I would tend to doubt it, but again, my impression is that light that's providing light in the parking area currently is not coming from the ball field, but coming from the street lamps that are on Northern Parkway and the other smaller lighting fixtures, which again may be an option and provide a softer, more park-like setting. But the idea of a 70-foot tall tower and multiple of them with these large fixtures on top of them, that's what upsets me. And again, I can live with this little glare that I've been exposed to from the 30-foot. Again, would I like them to be that noisy? And I realize there's a problem with illuminating the center of the field, but I don't know if 70 feet is the answer, or 50 feet, or 40 feet, even though it may require more of them, might be less visible than these huge towering poles that'll be there.
Thank you.
That's where my concern
Perfect.
comes in.
If you have more comments, you
not
can come
just
back
night,
at
but
the end.
daytime.
But you can come back later if at the end of the.
But can he answer the question as to how big the fixtures are? I think that.
Do we have?
Do we know what the physical dimensions?
I don't know offhand what the size of the arrays would be, though. One of the things to consider is if you're at Rose Court, you're going to be looking at the poles. You're not looking face on the poles. You're looking at the side of the poles.
I don't. That's not the question. I think the question is how. What is the physical size of the light fixture? I mean, this is. We have a lot of materials here. What is the physical? You don't have any idea. You don't have any idea. Are they 5 feet wide by 2 feet high?
No, the lighting fixture itself is 2.5 feet wide by about 1 foot deep by only about 6 inches in height. So it's relatively small. No, it's not. And there's gaps in between each fixture. It's not a solid like a structure. It's just they're attached to a bar, and there's going to be the 2 bars.
But on one of the some of the paperwork that we received, that's one unit, that's one fixture, but there are multiple fixtures on one pole, correct?
That's correct.
So how many fixtures on one? So we have to take that fixture, that size, and then multiply it?
Correct. I believe the maximum size, if I can, let me just do the calculation in my head. The maximum size of the number of fixtures, I believe, is 5 and 5. So that would be 2.5 times 5, which is about 10 feet. And then it's very thin between the two, so it might be maybe 2 feet total on the up and down. So it's much more cross,
side profile,
and then it's small in terms of the thickness. It's not the big round shells like you see now. They're very slim and triangular.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Crane, and I'm a lifelong resident of Ridgewood. I've lived here since I was born. I won't tell you how old I am, though. I've shared the residence with my husband, who just spoke before me at Rose Court. We will be living there for, I can't believe it, 29 years in August. We moved in on our son's 2nd birthday. He'll be 31. Where does the time go? Actually, as I was listening, I really appreciate Deputy Mayor Knudsen's comment and kind of reflected on what my husband was asking. I thought these were going to be the size you said, like maybe 2 feet by 1 foot by 6 inches. I'm confused now as to what the actual depiction of the fixtures on the poles will be, but we can get to that maybe a little later. My husband and I were here when the turf was being changed from grass and dirt to turf. I had a big paper that I didn't bring with me tonight, a whole pamphlet on arguing what the benefits and the pros and cons of the turf field were, injuries to athletes and other kinds of things, and environmental concerns. Anyway, the turf was placed, the turf has been resurfaced. We were promised by the town council at the time that there would never be permanent lighting put on that field. And I am a witness, an eyewitness to hearing those words, saying that there would never be permanent lights put on the field. I also know that we were promised that, and I do believe, actually I can't say we were promised, don't remember that, but I know back in the day, the cost of changing that field to turf, artificial turf, was going to be borne by the sports groups in its entirety. And now I'm, finding out that rules have changed. Now we might have permanent lighting. We were promised that we wouldn't. 2, that there's a portion of this cost that you're asking the town to bear, or the taxpayers to bear. And I feel that that's not fair either, because originally it was provided for sports services. I know it enhances our town. However, there are the sports councils and everything, raise funds, have fundraisers, have charity dinners, have auctions, have all kinds of things, and they should really be the ones bearing the cost for these improvements and not the town or the taxpayers. So I just wanted to say that that is kind of not an inconsistency, or it's not staying along the lines that the original proposals were made. I do have a question for you. You mentioned one pole is going to be 80 feet tall, not 70, but 80. Which one? 80 feet. That was said, I almost thought they were all 70, and then I heard 180 and 570.
Correct.
That's taller than twice the height of the temporary lights or the generator lights that are being used now.
The pole that is on the infield down at the bottom of the picture there.
On the third base line?
On the third base line. That's the one that's taller.
That's the 80-foot pole.
That's correct, because that
it's like a cell tower, right?
Reach all the way up. No, it's not like a cell tower.
It's not as high as the cell tower?
It's not as high as a cell tower. Most cell towers are 110 to 120 feet to get the coverage. Most cell towers are approximately 36 to 42 inches in diameter.
But cell towers aren't put in residential neighborhoods. Whereas these lights on a...
I can't answer that, but I'm just saying in comparison, the diameter of the lighting pole that we're talking about is 14 inches. The diameter of a cell tower is 35 to 42 inches because they're not allowed to deflect in the wind.
Okay. Do I still have a little more time or no?
Yeah, when you hear the beep.
Okay. The trees, I would hazard a guess that the maximum tree heights in that area, the mature trees, are between, at the very most, 50 to 60 feet, except maybe some of the evergreens, which are substantially taller. They're also dying. But the thought of looking out of my windows on Rose Court and see, I understand the more focused beam of light, so I do get the fact that you won't see as much glare coming from the light, but the poles are literally going to be 1.5 or, almost twice as tall as the current lights. I also respect the fact that the current lights are noisy, do generate, smell, do generate sound,
Sorry,
and these won't.
Since we're asking questions, Heather, we just do it for 5 minutes then.
Okay.
Because there's not enough time.
Thank you.
We're going to ask
Thank you,
questions
Mayor.
from the expert.
So I do understand the benefits of the LED lights, although not sure about how those fixtures are going to what surface area those fixtures take up. But still, I was following your physics of the higher the lights and the more focused the beam. However, with as much plantings, I'm looking at it basically, I'm sorry, from my vantage point. So it's not shared burden here, but it's selfish, sorry. But if you would, even though there's the greater angle of spillage diagonally, if the lights were mounted lower, that would probably be blocked by a lot of the beautiful plantings and everything, and also allow the height of the poles to be reduced 10 feet, whatever, 15 feet. And you might need more poles, which I can't believe I'm saying this because I really don't want any poles. I don't want permanent lighting, but it looks like that's a battle I'm going to lose probably. So the idea is that if we don't have to look up and see these huge, tall towers all during the daylight hours, we might, and there may be a little angulation difference, you might be able to be as conservative as you can with additional lower, maybe 2 pole, I don't know, I'm guessing, but you'll do your analysis, and maybe it won't be quite as aerially, as eye-catchingly high, these poles, and yet still provide lights that the sports teams need to practice their sports. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Powers, and I have lived at 313 Vesta Court for over 30 years. My house is at the southeastern corner of Vesta Court and is directly across from Maple Park. I'm a former Parks and Recreation Board member, and I'm a retired public school principal. I am very much in favor of having lights at Maple Park, no matter what kind of lights they are. However, the portable lights currently in use are far from ideal. They are loud, I hear them. They are smelly, I smell them. And they produce a great deal of glare. And I think they are also potentially dangerous, given that they are diesel-powered and you have issues with refueling and such. I fully support the proposed permanent system. These lights produce no noise, no odor, and little or no spillage. They are safer in general because no fuel is involved. They are safer for the athletes because they provide much better lighting on the field. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue. Good night.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dave O'Shea. I live at 241 Northern Parkway. I've lived in Ridgewood for 24 years. I have probably, maybe with a few exceptions on Meadowbrook, the closest proximity to the new lights. And I want to be clear, I have no problem with any lights at Maple Field. I kind of actually enjoy the lights. It lights up my front yard to a certain degree. I don't mind that, actually. I do have to take issue with the fact that Northern Parkway, where my house sits, and Graydon Terrace, they sit much higher than the parking lot at Maple. And the example that you gave of the vantage of the lights doesn't necessarily apply. And if you looked out my front window at an 80-foot light, you could almost reach out and touch it at that point. So I'm all for the lights at Maple, especially the improved lights over the diesel, but I have a little bit of an issue with an 80-foot light at the home plate. I think that those trees are at best 40 feet high there. I mean, you can maybe get to a 50, 60-foot tree back towards the stable in the western part of the park, but on the parking lot, I'd have to disagree that they're 80 feet there, the trees. So anyway, I'm for the lights. I'm not necessarily for the 80-foot tower right on outside my window. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ed Severs, 168 North Maple Avenue. I'm here as treasurer of the Ridgewood Baseball and Softball Association, the largest youth sports group in Ridgewood. I've been involved in youth sports for over 30 years in town. I certainly remember Maple as a grass field, and I can tell you that even back when we did initially come before the council to turf the field, there certainly were light towers that were being used in connection with the grass field that was there. The light towers were purchased initially in the late 1990s, and we actually still have some of those light towers that are 20 plus years old that are still being maintained at the cost of the sports groups in order to keep them working. When Maple was turfed, just because the issue was raised about the cost of it and paying for it, the project cost $750,000. The sports groups fundraised $850,000, with the additional $100,000 going towards the improvement between the parking lot and the field, so that area was improved with being cleared out and plantings being put in there. We certainly in the sports groups support this as a means of improving the light situation on the field, and we stand behind it with the money that the sports groups have pledged towards this. We're certainly, as youth sports groups, not strangers to donating. Aside from Maple, we've done things like putting in irrigation systems all around town, even right here at Betts Field, when the 90-foot, the large baseball field, was improved. The Ridgewood Baseball Association, together with the high school group, spent $160,000 of improvements on that, not taxpayer money. As some of you may be able to tell from my address, I'm right here on Maple Avenue across from Vets West or Upper Vets. People call it different things. And I sit a little bit higher. I have a vantage point to look towards the high school, where Stevens and the stadium field have lights that are the older style. I see that halo glow over the field. I think the trees that are all along the right-of-way, which is what would block my view, and which continue all the way up along the right-of-way, along Maple, are going to provide that same limitation. The benefit is we're not going to see the halo. So I think that's a plus too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Richard Brooks, 777 East Ridgewood Avenue. I wanted to read into the record the letter that I wrote to the mayor and council on April 29th. Before that, I just wanted to state that I'm the chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Board, and our charge really is to make sure that the parks that we have are optimized and we can provide the most benefits to the most number of people, citizens of Ridgewood. So that's what we go into our meeting every month, thinking about. How do we make the parks better? Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ridgewood Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Board, I write in support of the Parks and Recreation Department's plan to construct a state-of-the-art lighting system at Maple Park East, located at the intersection of Northern Parkway and Middlebrook Road. The lighting plan is an evolutionary next step in the enhancement of this village recreation space that is currently one of the most heavily used sports facilities in town. At present, Maple Field is used for soccer, lacrosse, football, baseball, and soccer and softball throughout the year. In addition, Maple Field also hosts summer youth campers participating in the Parks and Recreation Department's camp program, and on occasion, physical education classes from Ridgewood elementary schools. In the summer of 2018, the artificial surface was replaced by the village after exceeding its normal life expectancy of 10 to 12 years. Since the completion of that project, the popularity of Maple has increased to near unprecedented levels, and it is routinely called the best field in town. Illuminating the field with a brand new system that takes advantage of the latest in broad area lighting technology is a logical enhancement for the Parks and Recreation Department to initiate. Ridgewood's recreation sports leagues have been using portable lighting machines for nighttime play for as long as the park has been used. The diesel-powered light generators are an expensive and inefficient method to illuminate playing fields and deliver increased noise, air pollution, and noxious diesel fumes while they are operational. Following extensive conversations among the sports organizations and parks and recreation professionals, a plan was developed to construct a new electrical lighting system at Maple East that will provide complete illumination of Maple Field and will eliminate the generator noise and emissions. Preliminary planning for construction of the new system commenced approximately 3 months ago, and professionals from the Village Engineering Department, Signal Department, and Parks and Recreation Department have been involved from the earliest stages, as have members of several of the sports organizations. The lighting plan has been presented to and approved by the Fields Committee and the Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Board. The project will be managed by the Village Engineering Department. Costs will be shared by the sports organizations who use Maple East the most: Maroon Soccer Club, boys and girls; Ridgewood Soccer Association, boys, girls, and adults; Ridgewood Baseball and Softball Association, boys and girls; Ridgewood Lacrosse Association, boys and girls; and Ridgewood Junior Football Association, boys and girls. Public financing and targeted grant funds from Bergen County will also be used to complete payment. The lighting plan was presented to the PRC board at its March meeting, and the board voted unanimously to support the project. On behalf of the PRC board, I look forward to working on this project and respectfully request your permission to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich, I have a quick question. I didn't catch the first line in its entirety that you stated that your charge was to optimize the land to maximize the use by the most people.
Get the most out of them.
To get to accommodate the most people.
Yes.
Okay. So I just as a explanation, how does that reconcile, that statement, with the third part of the Parks Rec Conservation? How does optimizing property for the use by the most people reconcile with conservation? And I'm just asking the question because I actually don't know the answer, and hopefully you can shed some light on that.
I think that the conservation piece of our department, and certainly we focus as much on this as anything else. Conservation and the environment is taken into consideration in any project that we're involved with. So this one would be no different.
And how was conservation taken into account on this project?
Well, the simplest answer is that we're getting rid of the diesel fumes, and we're not going to have kids play around diesel engines. And
okay, that's environment, not to be confused with conservation of public lands. I would imagine that the conservation piece of it shouldn't be, and I'm not disagreeing with you in terms of diesel and the environment, but I'm talking about conservation as it relates to that charge, because the diesel fuel in those lights are environmental. That's an environmental issue. Conservation is, I would argue, different.
Okay.
So how was conservation calculated into or considered into this project? I mean, who on the board is weighed in on in the context of conservation?
I guess we could say we're conserving fuel, but I don't want to.
So Rich, I'm going to.
I guess I'm confused.
I just appreciate it.
We have a park that's being used as much as it can now.
Okay.
We're not going to be creating any new parks that can accommodate the kinds of programs that currently use maple. So, from an environmental standpoint, I think that we're much more active. We're actually, I guess I don't understand why there would be a conservation piece with maple since it already exists.
Well, wouldn't we be conserving other properties based on our use of this? In other words, we'd be using other stuff, probably less in conserving those particular properties that are part of our public lands. So in essence, what you're trying to do is by using this more, you use other stuff less, therefore you conserve those that are being used less.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that serious? No, I'm sorry, that's not, I mean, I asked Rich to answer the question. It was a really simple question. You made a statement that the properties that you're charged. I wasn't looking to have an explanation from Councilman Voigt. I was asking from you.
I misunderstood
in the context
I conflated
of,
conservation with environmental.
I agree.
I
so
apologize
my only question was to reconcile that piece of the conservation as to when you made the statement that your charge was to optimize property for the maximum use by the most people. I just wanted to understand how that reconciled with the conservation end, because in my mind, if you're conserving land as public land, then you're not you can't maximize that land then for use by the most people. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's okay. We'll move on to the next person.
We're not going to be destroying any resources in creating this new system.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lucia Van Wettering Donahue, and
I just need you to move closer to the microphone, please.
I didn't want to blow it out.
But you need to move closer.
All right. My name is Lucia Van Wettering Donahue, and I've been a resident of Ridgewood for 19 years approximately now. I listened to the presentation, and as a layperson who hadn't listened to any of this or read about it before, I found it to be pretty forthright. I did have some questions that were asked by the council and the deputy mayor and the mayor, which were answered for me. As a consumer and a resident, to me it's a win-win. There are fewer poles, the glare is reduced, it's multi-sport friendly, the LED is instant on, instant off. 2/3 approximately of the funding is going to be subsidized. There's a 25-year warranty, and there are wireless controls. So I like all of those things as a resident, as a parent of a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old. My 12-year-old plays soccer, and in the spring, he is relegated to playing soccer on the side of the basketball court at BF at night, when I have to pick him up, and there is no good area to stop your car and pick up your child safely there. So I always get out of my car, even though he's 12, I get out of my car and I make sure he gets to the parking lot because it's dark by then. Plus, that field is way overused by other soccer teams while his team is practicing. The other place that he practices in the spring is on the side of this building, I guess across the street from the building. So across from the police car parking area is a little bitty area that is got a little path going through it that you could use to walk to Vets Field, and that's where his other practice is relegated to during the week. So having Maple Field be utilized at night would be fantastic. It's a safe place to pick him up. I obviously don't live on Rose Street or Northern Parkway, but by the descriptions, everything is being done possible to minimize the intrusion on residents who live nearby, and I think it's a great thing. So I am in favor of it, and I just wanted to represent that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Moskowitz again. I think I had 3 minutes and get 5, so I'm entitled to
You have 2 more.
All right. I'm not opposed to improving the lighting system. I think it's a great idea to do it. I was hoping that they could furnish a photograph of the fixtures that they're proposing to install, or if there were ones that have already been installed, that we can see what these fixtures will look like. And I realize it is a awesome responsibility that you as members of the board have to balance the needs for us to have parks that can be utilized by our kids. I'm well in favor of it. I don't think we should necessarily expand the hours that the lights are on in order to do that. I'm pretty sure the field is being used to the maximum that it can now, and I have no problems with that. I think that's being done well, but can definitely be improved. I only see one plan being proposed, not any options to the board as well. I don't know whether the criteria was what's the most economical way we can accomplish this goal, because there's a balance that always achieves. When we spend, if we spend a little more, maybe we can get a better result without having as tall light fixtures. I'm not sure if more or more expensive, less aesthetic, but I've only seen one option presented and no other alternatives that may or may not be considered, or what criteria were looked at to come up with this proposal. Was it what's the least expensive way we can accomplish this, or what's the best way we can accomplish this? I once got in trouble by going before the Board of Ed and saying, I don't mind paying higher taxes because I'm getting a quality education for my kids, and my picture was in the paper that says, Dr. Moskowitz asked for higher taxes. No, I didn't exactly say that. I say, I know you get what you pay for in life. This is a town that always has considered the balance between the parks are important, the quality of the life for the residents, it's all important. That I want to just make sure that the best proposal is the one that you're considering, not just a proposal and what the criteria were involved for that. I think we do need to improve this system. The fumes aren't good, the noise isn't great, the quality of the light isn't. Let's do something the best way we can, not just the cheapest way we can.
Thank you. So Bob, there was actually 2 questions embedded in the comments. Can you go back, please, to the slide that shows what the lighting fixture looks like? This one?
Yes.
So that's a single. So when we're talking about the actual kind of grouping of them, the clusters at each of those poles, if I'm looking at it from the side, if I'm on Rose Core looking at it, I'm really worried about then the side profile of these lights.
Correct.
And then we're talking about 2 stacked on top of each other, or 3?
There's going to be 2 bars.
2 bars.
One and a first and a second bar at the top of the pole. The fixtures themselves are spaced across each one of the bars depending upon how many fixtures we have. If you're looking at the side profile, you're seeing that's what I was trying to describe as the triangle. Okay. There's a small cone which attaches it to the actual cross arm itself, and then you're looking at the side profile of basically a triangle, if you will.
Sure. So that from the side profile, you're looking at 2 triangles.
That's correct.
Got it. And then the other question, in the considerations for the project and how the bid, I guess, was put together, what was sort of the the task? Was it to optimize the most amount of light to cover that distance, per cost, or by the number of installations? What was sort of the math that was put into this?
I'll state it this way. Number one priority was to provide a safe and playable environment for the ball players. That was the first. So that goes into the design criteria that we designed based upon what the Illuminating Engineering Society recommends for lighting levels on the field, for heights of poles, for locations of poles. They have very thorough guidelines for every sport that talk about where poles can be, what heights of poles should be, and illumination levels should be. The second criteria that was made, and it was equally important, it was very clear to me from the onset, was the neighbors. We had to make sure that we were not imposing any additional impact on the neighbors with the new lighting system than is currently in place. Number three is the economical conditions. So we want to make sure that we're also being wise stewards of the funds that are available and the cost that's going to take the project, not only the initial phase of the project, which is the construction of the project, but also for the operation and the lifetime of the project as well. That's where that warranty comes in, the controls come into play. So it's a holistic approach, if you would. Safety and playability, minimal impact, cost.
Thank you.
I have one question. Can you go back to the slide where you're showing the field with these lights on it, with your depiction of your light?
Soccer or the baseball? Here's the soccer.
Yeah, that's fine. When we're looking at the tree line, so to Dr. Moskowitz's question, are those lights actually, I guess, to scale to are they the proper size scale to the tree line? Are they right? Or are we looking at something that's not accurate? I mean, actually, where is this field?
This field, I'm not exactly sure where the location of this field is. This is a field that we photographed. We primarily show this photograph for a 30-foot candle field. These are the two poles which you would have in a 30-foot candle field. I'm not sure what the exact height of the trees are in this photograph. The purpose of this photograph is to show field illumination, and it's to show the ability to control glare from the two poles.
So, but what is the height? Let me rephrase the question. What is the height of those poles?
Those two poles are 70 feet.
70.
That's
okay.
correct.
All right, but
that I do know.
Okay, I guess that was more simply put. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Florian Weispinning. I live on 763.
I need you to really speak into the microphone.
I live on 763 Upper Boulevard. I'll keep this very short because I think a lot of good arguments have been made and said. I'm here for RSA, Ridgewood Soccer Association. I'm on the board. I'm actually in charge of adult soccer, and we would have loved to get some space there, but we were told there was not a chance because it's already busy. Even though we fully support this project, we absolutely stand by our financial commitment that we've made. And the other one thing I'd like to say is that I'm really proud that all the sports teams have actually collaborated on this really, really well, which is not something that happens a lot. So I think I'd really like to ask the council to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Bernhardt. I live at 209 Avondale Road. I'm also president of the Ridgewood Lacrosse Association, one of the sponsoring sports groups of this proposal. I'm going to give a purely selfish reason for why we're piling on and working closely with our other sports groups. When I moved to Ridgewood 12 years ago, my first athletic experience was on Maple Park Field, and sharing that event that evening, the conversation centered around, wouldn't it be nice if we had permanent lights on this field? And that conversation led to the next time I had that discussion, which was when I joined the board of the Ridgewood Lacrosse Association, and Paul Sheridan, who was president at that time, said to the board directly, we need to start saving our money now, because when the opportunity comes to put permanent lighting in Maple Park Field, I don't want us to be in a position where we can't support it. It's been my goal, since I've been president for the last 4 years, to continue that endeavor. We've been setting money aside solely for this purpose, and I'll explain why. The spring season for us is 10 weeks. The first 2 weeks are generally unplayable because of the cold. If you have daughters who have ever played lacrosse, you understand how difficult it is to run around with a metal stick in 30-degree weather. It's almost impossible. So the middle of our season tends to be incredibly rainy, as we've experienced over the last 2 to 3 weeks. In an effort to save our grass space and conserve our town fields, we spend as much time as we possibly can on turf. Solely because of the lighting situation on Maple, we're unable to use Maple Park Field from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. at night because you can't throw a lacrosse ball in the current lights. It's completely unsafe. Again, if you had a young daughter or a young son running around trying to catch a hard rubber ball in that light, you would understand very quickly why that doesn't work. Selfishly, I want this project because our sport is growing. It's growing rapidly. We've lost a number of games, a number of practices this season solely because of the rain and wet and protecting our current grass fields. We would love to have access to this field at night. It is the best field in town that we don't get the opportunity to spend the evening on. When I watch Maroon Soccer at 7:30 at night take over the slot after we leave at 7:30, I watch them huddle around the lights because they can't play in the middle of the field. We're not maximizing the opportunity to use this field appropriately. When I look at the portable lights surrounding the field, it's embarrassing. They become dumpsters. There's coffee cups, there's Gatorade bottles. Now, that's on us for not policing the property better, but it becomes a magnet for that type of behavior, and it really diminishes the quality of the park. I understand the perspective of tall towers. When I look at these pictures, it's easy for me to say, because I live on the other side of town, that wouldn't be a big deal. I get it. I do think that trees continue to grow, as that barrier has continued to grow over the last 10 years, and that Maple Park surrounding has grown quite substantially. And maybe 10 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this, but I can imagine it now. It's time. We have the demand. This town is growing. Youth sports are an important component of this town. This would be a good thing for our town sports programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Lauren Cuneo. I live at 373 Mountain Ave. I am an 11-year resident of Ridgewood, and I have 3 elementary school children. I'm here standing before you as a Maroon Soccer Club board member. I am also a parent coach within the Maroon Soccer Club organization. I am a spectator and supporter of the RBSA and the RLA as my children participate in those programs as well. We, as a Maroon Soccer Club, strongly support the new light plan that has been proposed tonight. I'm going to keep this short because it's past my bedtime, but as a coach, I coach 2 age groups. I coach 8 and 9-year-olds, and I coach 11 and 12-year-olds. Happens more often in the fall than the spring, but when we have practice from 5 to 6:30, the lights have to come on. I am usually the one turning the lights on the field, and number one, it's challenging to do. Number two, it's very loud, so a group of 8 and 9-year-olds have trouble hearing. There's been multiple times where the lights just haven't turned on. Not your fault, but it's just challenging for us. So there's a safety concern there, though. When they are on, a group of 8 and 9-year-olds are still not in control of their bodies, and they run into each other because the lighting is just not there. A group of 11 and 12-year-olds are big and strong. They're in control of their body, but they want to run, and they want to push, and they want to kick the ball really hard. So there's a safety element there when the field is not entirely lit. And we are working on a tiny little area for girls to really grow in the sport. It just is not helpful. Someone spoke about the schedule change. It probably wouldn't change in terms of the timing, right? 8:45 or 9, I'm not really sure. But what would change would be the amount of teams that could actually utilize the field to the best of, their ability. As someone pointed out before, if you go there at night, there's a soccer team in this corner, there's a soccer team in this corner, maybe there's another soccer team in this corner. I'm going to say not even half the field is being used. So, you know, and you made this point before about conserving the land. The grass fields in Ridgewood are terrible. That's a whole other conversation. But if we were able to bring the players off of the grass field and put them on the turf, it would alleviate the stress that the grass fields endure in the spring. So thank you for listening, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Skip Cox. I live at 279 Bel Air Road here in Ridgewood. I've lived in town for 19 years. I have children at Ridge Elementary, GW Middle School, and the high school, and one who's in college now. Throughout the time in town, I've been a parent with kids playing both baseball and lacrosse. I've been a parent and a coach and a board member of the Ridgewood Soccer Association, and I'm currently both a coach and a board member for the Maroons Soccer Club. I'm also heavily involved with the Ridgewood Area Youth Rugby Club, which doesn't use Maple, but we use the other fields in town. I think the bottom line that as to why the Maroons particularly support this proposal is there just isn't enough light on Maple Field to make it usable during darkness. As Lauren just said, there's groups of kids in every corner. The whole middle of the field is unusable because there's only one or less than 1 foot candle, which is a term I learned last night when I was out with Bob looking at the field. You know, we've talked about the portable lights. The portable lights, someone had a question about the cost. I did some really rough math, and I think it's about $1,800 just in fuel costs that the town supports to fuel them. There's about 40 to 60 man hours of the guys down at the Parks and Rec Department, moving them out into place, pulling them back, fueling them, setting up the towers, raising them and lowering them. That's something that I do personally. So I also have a very selfish reason for hoping that these permanent light towers go in, just to save my back and shoulders. The towers that we have, they're old, they're finicky, they are loud, they're noisy, they emit the diesel fumes that everybody has spoken of. If you don't turn them off properly in the right sequence, then the next time someone goes to turn them on, they might not work. And so when we have 7 towers out there, we have 5 that are working right now. Earlier in the spring, we had, at one point, I was getting calls, we have 2 towers that are working. And so when you have 2 towers that are working, that are providing 16 or 17 foot candles in a tiny corner of Maple Field, and you have 6 teams that are scheduled to practice on that field, I would say 70 or 80% of that field is unusable. These towers, Maple Field is the premier turf field in town. It is underutilized. I think that right now there are no games that are ever scheduled to be played on Maple. It's all practices because there just isn't enough light to properly play any kind of actual game on the field. I think the only thing I had left to say was that the Maroon Soccer Club wholeheartedly supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again. I don't think I said my address the last time, so it's 257 Rose Court,
Okay, your name again.
Jacqueline Crane. Well, it's pretty obvious that I'm actually in the minority here tonight by a long shot, and I just want to make it clear that I love, as I said, I was born and raised here. Marrying my husband, it was almost a contingency that he had to accept living in Ridgewood if he wanted to marry me. Thanks, honey. So, but I have a few points to make. And by the way, the letter that I got came on Monday in general mail, not certified. I don't know if it needed to be. Just wanted it on the record that no certified letters went out for residents within 200 feet or whatever of the area. Didn't know if it needed to be, but it didn't. But I got a general mailing, and I came on Monday 2 days ago. Second, okay, I appreciate the fact that, you say that there are trees that cover. Trees don't keep growing as a matter of nature. Certain species of trees reach a maximum height at 50 to 55 feet. Those 55
Ma'am,
foot feet.
please address
Those 55-foot
not
trees
the
are
public.
never going to grow to 70 feet. They just aren't. Biologically, they can't. That's one point. Also, I love trees in Ridgewood. I've actually planted a few in memoriam of my parents who moved to Ridgewood in Looning Park. So I do love trees and try to help out where I can. The other question is, obviously we have a shortage of field space, so I'd really like the Parks and Rec people to go about conserving more land in the form of parks and changing that field into turf fields so that there could be more desirable fields for our children to play on instead of everyone wanting to play at the premier gem of all fields, which is Looning. And another point, what I'm hearing is, as this field, whether it's maximally utilized or not, it now will be with permanent lighting, which I was promised wouldn't happen, but all those people are gone, so you didn't break your promises. The bottom line is it sounds like traffic could actually get enhanced and worse in our neighborhood with all the comings and goings if it is even possible to utilize Maple Park now that the permanent lights obviously will be, some form of them will be approved. So those are the traffic implications, the fact that trees don't grow taller than they biologically can. My last question is, where can I see a depiction of what that picture is going to look like from my vantage point? Where can I go in this state and drive to see what I will be seeing? Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the closest fields that you can look at that's a similar field to this is Alps Road Park in Wayne. There's an overlaid field there. There's a few more poles there because there's another overlaid field on it, but that is one field that you could take a look at. But the pictures now, the poles will look the way they will look. Yeah, very similar. And that's one of the parks you've done? This is the same proposed lighting.
That's Hasgrove Park in Wayne?
Alps Road Park in Wayne.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I just want to clarify the resolution with respect to costs. As I understand it, the way the resolution is written, the sports groups have contributed $140,000 or will contribute $140,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there is a grant application that is going to be filed with your approval, and the grant, if authorized, the maximum amount of the grant would be $145,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if the maximum amount of the grant is awarded, then the village would be responsible for $145,000.
Right.
Is the resolution written that if no grant money becomes available, the village will be responsible for $290,000? I don't understand that. The sports groups, who are the primary supporters of this and primarily opponents of this, have put down $140,000. That's their maximum that they're going to put down. The village could be on the hook for as much as $290,000. I don't understand that. Why isn't the resolution written so that if the grant money doesn't come through, you can go back to the sports groups and ask them for more money?
It's the standard wording for grants.
I understand it's standard wording, but it doesn't sound fair to the taxpayers that the taxpayers have a risk factor here. We don't know what we're getting into because we don't know how much grant money is going to be authorized. This is the same situation that's going on with the library. The library is going to apply for a grant and has no idea how much money they're going to get. I realize it's standard wording, but it still annoys me that one group has already knows what their number is. The taxpayers do not know what the number is. We're speculating that we may get $145,000 from a grant, but we may get $0. I don't understand how come everybody doesn't have equal skin in the game here. If no grant money comes available, you go back to the sports group and you say, no grant money has become available, you've got to pony up more money here. The taxpayers have no idea what this is going to cost. It could cost $145,000, it could cost $290,000. I don't like the sound of that at all.
So just, I think that, and maybe, hopefully I understood you correctly, the resolution doesn't mention the sports groups, and they're part of it, correct? Because
no, it doesn't, because this is just a grant application.
So the hearing is actually just for the grant to approve us moving forward with the grant application. So in that context, the only piece of that in the resolution would be our portion and the county's portion, but it doesn't commit. If there's $0 money comes from the county, we'd have to come back. You'd have to come back to this village council, and then we'd have to decide whether or not we want to move forward, or we would have to maybe go back to the folks in the sports groups and say, do we want to split this? I have to say, in fairness, and I'm just saying this, our track record with the county is quite good.
Okay, so we're not committed to go forward with the project until we know how much money we're going to get.
Specifically for the
This,
grant.
this hearing is specifically to advance the grant application. We're actually not, technically, even if we were to receive the grant money, we're still not even committed to moving forward with the project.
That's correct. We could refuse to accept the grant if we wish to do so.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one point about the lighting. I'm not sure, there have been a lot of comments on social media about the restroom facilities. Is this lighting going to cover where the restroom facilities are? There's currently a porta-john on the property, and my belief is that when the stable was remodeled, there was a clause that said that their bathrooms would be open when Maple Field was open so people could use the bathrooms at Maple Field. Are those bathrooms open, and will the lighting cover that area, or does additional lighting need to be put in so people can safely walk from the field to the bathroom area? Thank you.
Are the bathrooms being used?
The restrooms are open.
Okay, good.
At the stable. And contrary to comment on public media this week, I inspected the restrooms at that Porta-John at Maple 2 days ago. It was serviced on 5/1, so it is having its weekly service. I don't know where the negativity was coming from, but I will tell you that it looked fine to me.
But do we keep the porta-john there? Just it's really not relative to the lighting question, but do we keep the porta-john there even though we're using the other bathroom? Folks, okay.
Any other questions from the council? Public?
I do have another question. So if we were to advance this, because this is really just the piece, as we just explained, this is only the piece that allows us to advance the application for the grant monies. But is it the right thing to do to address Dr. Moskowitz and Dr. Crane's comments regarding the height of the fixtures over the tree line? Is it something that we should go back and ask for additional information as to whether or not there's a second Plan B lighting plan that doesn't give that visual impact? Because when somebody said that trees would grow higher, it didn't occur to me until Dr. Crane mentioned it that the trees actually biologically can't do that. So they go to a certain height and that's it. So it's a great point. It did tell me, I wouldn't know. But is there a second alternative plan that should be developed that maybe adds more poles and get...
Yeah, you're out of time. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he wants me to be out of time.
Apologize.
Yeah, so is that something we can do? I'm asking, Rich, is that something that Parks, Recreation, Conservation Board, in fairness to the folks that are going to look at, I walk through the high school and I get what they're saying because those are tall lights and there's this big thing on top of them and they're going to see that visual impact. We were so focused on the light spillage, it never occurred to me the daytime impact.
One thing to consider that the high school field is lit to 50-foot candles, not to 30. So it's lit to almost twice the light level as what we're proposing here at Maple Park. The light poles at the high school are all 80-foot poles. There are 4 80-foot poles that you have at the high school.
Yeah, but we're talking about the physical dimensions of those fixtures, the triangles.
Yeah, those fixtures are actually larger than the triangular fixtures because they have a larger wind loading, a larger effective projected area. These will actually be smaller than that. There'll be less fixtures because we have a significantly lower light level than what you have at the high school.
Okay, so why don't let's rephrase the question again. Can we establish the height of the trees in that area?
Sure.
Okay. It's a serious question.
No, I can have the arborist go out and measure for you. Sure.
I mean, we do it all the time in, board meeting, we do it, you can triangulate that and figure it out. And then how that would actually physically look with those lights coming out over the top, and then move forward from there to determine if we need to come up with an alternative plan, just as a suggestion.
Okay, I just want to mention we have to act on this resolution tonight if we're going to move forward because May 20th is the deadline.
But it doesn't commit us to a plan.
Mm-hmm.
per se.
I mean, it's permanent lighting is what the plan is, so.
It doesn't commit, yes, I understand it commits us to a
Right.
lighting plan, but it doesn't commit us to the details of that plan. So it could be, that could be a fluid situation right now.
Okay, let's move on. I move the public hearing be closed.
Please identify yourself.
Rorick Holiday, 374 Evergreen Place. When you have a 180-degree point of view, and you are about 200 yards away from a lamppost, can you really tell if it's 80 feet, 70 feet, or 60 feet? Doesn't make any difference. You can hardly see it. So let's keep things in perspective.
Well, okay.
Thank you very much.
What he's saying is correct. If you were looking at different poles of different height, depending on how far away you are, unless you have something as a standard guide, like a building where you could count the number of floors, it would not be possible to tell the difference in those heights unless you could actually see poles of different heights, and that's a very good point that he's bringing up.
And also, as a 50-year-old resident who has no dog in the hunt, as they say, because I live on Evergreen, plus I don't have any kids, but nothing pleases me more than to see kids playing in these fields. And yes, we need to maximize the use of these fields. And to play the game with conservation versus usage is disingenuous to the terrible. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do. And to put a gentleman like Rich and to grill him about how do you balance conservation with use is just ridiculous. So my vote as a taxpayer, and I have always supported kids and spending money on kids and having good parks, is just go ahead and do it. And if one couple is against it, so be it. This is the price of progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I move the public hearing be closed.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton? Yes. Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
Okay, I'll read the resolution in full. Whereas the Bergen County Open Space, Recreation, Floodplain Protection, Farmland, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund, County Trust Fund, provides matching grants to municipal governments and to nonprofit organizations for assistance in the development or redevelopment of outdoor municipal recreation facilities. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood desires to further the public interest by obtaining a matching grant of $145,000 from the County Trust Fund to fund the following project: Maple Park East Lights. And whereas the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood has reviewed the County Trust Fund Program Statement and the Trust Fund Municipal Program Park Improvement Application and Information, and furnished such documents as they may be required. And whereas, as part of the application process, the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood held the required public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed park improvements in the application on May 8th, 2019. Whereas the County of Bergen shall determine whether the application is complete and in conformance with the scope and intent of the County Trust Fund. And whereas the applicant is willing to use the County Trust Fund in accordance with such rules, regulations, and applicable statutes, and is willing to enter into an agreement with the County of Bergen for the above-named project and ensure its completion on or about the project contract expiration date. Now therefore be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, 1, that it is hereby authorized to submit the above completed project application to the county by the deadline of May 20th, 2019, and established by the county, and 2, that in the event of a county trust fund award that may be less than the grant money requested above, the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood has or will secure the balance of funding necessary to complete the project or modify the project as necessary, and 3, that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood is committed to providing a dollar-for-dollar cash match for the project, and 4, that only those park improvements identified and approved in the project application, its trust fund contract, or other documentation will be considered eligible for reimbursement, and 5, the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood agrees to comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations in its performance of the project, and 6, that this resolution shall take effective immediately. May I have a motion?
Second.
Newton?
Before I vote, I just want to say that I actually think this is a good proposal. I think it's a great proposal. I do think we need to be cognizant of what the residents are saying about the height. And my own kids played lacrosse, baseball, football, roller hockey, and rugby. So I got you there. And so, yes, I'll vote yes.
So you said yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Seaton? Yes. Voigt?
I would vote yes, except for the resolution number 2 that puts us on the hook. I'm concerned about that. If that language was taken out, I would be in favor of this. But we can't do that.
No, we can't take it out, but again, if we get the grant and it's less than that amount, we don't have to move forward with the grant. We can tell the county, no, thank you very much, but we're not going to accept the grant.
Okay.
That's our option.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Walsh?
Yes.
Hache?
Yeah, and I'll just add, as a council liaison to both the Fields and the Parks and Recreation Conservation Board, this is something that came up, it's been discussed now for some time, and I know that we've had discussions with the board members as well as the sports groups, and I really appreciate the amount of work and the thought that's gone into this, and I think that, and hearing you articulate exactly that the first, concerns with the safety, which is we all want for our children who use these fields, mine included, the consideration for the neighbors, and I think, again, looking at the technology of how these lights have evolved over time, I think it's leaps and bounds beyond anything we have in town currently. So our frame of reference is based on some very old technology. I think that, looking ahead and looking at how this stuff works, I think it's a great step forward. And also looking at the cost. At the end of the day, wish we had, infinite amounts of funding for these projects, but we don't. So I do appreciate also the extent that the sports organizations have gone into raising the money. And I know there was some talk about some of the history behind some of the funding. The funding for the development of the field to what it is now, sort of the framework for what it is now, came from the sports organizations. And it was the village who really didn't keep its promise at the time. We're supposed to have kept a sinking fund of sorts. So the amount that the village was supposed to have saved in maintaining a turf field versus a grass field, that money, that savings should have gone into an account to fund the next field when the useful life of the old field would have come up. That never happened. So that is why the village this time had to step up and cover the cost of replacement of the field. So yeah, obviously, yeah, I vote yes.
Thank you. So the next item is Village Manager's Report. I just want to let everyone know that the final voter registration night for the primary election is Tuesday, May 14th. Registration will take place in the village clerk's office from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and then from 4:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. in the Ridgewood Public Library lobby. Saturday, May 11th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Bergen County Utilities Authority will collect household hazardous waste at Camp Gaw Mountain Reservation in Mahwah, rain or shine. Bergen County residency is required. A free dogs rabies clinic will be held at Graydon Pool parking lot on Wednesday, May 15th from 6 to 7 p.m. Microchipping will also be available. Dogs must be registered in the month of June. Late fees begin July 1st. Please, I just want to make a reminder to renew dog licenses. They've been sent out. All those reminders have been sent out to residents. Shedler House update. 6 contractors have been approved and qualified to work on the restoration and rehabilitation of the Shedler House. The contractors have been invited to a walkthrough of the house and will submit their bids in early June. Hudson Street Parking Garage. Village residents are invited to view the presentation boards showing the outside materials and finishes for the Hudson Street Parking Garage on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2 weeks from tonight at 7 p.m. We'll open up the courtroom a little early. You can come in. You can look at the presentation boards. We will have a representative from probably the architects that evening. So that's prior to the Village Council work session, which begins at 7:30 that night. We will have a short presentation by the architects that evening during the council work session as well. The Parks Recreation Department is selling annual Graydon Pool memberships. Graydon Pool opens Saturday, June 1st. There will be registration on Saturdays, May 11th and May 18th at the Graden Pool Badge Office, excuse me, from 10 a.m. to noon. Registration for summer day camp is also started and open until the cutoff of June 10th. The train station parking lot construction continues. There is parking for those who have the premium parking permits or the Hudson Street parking permits, and also shoppers and diners may park in the last 3 rows of the Hudson Street parking lot. I was there today at about 11 o'clock, 11:10 a.m., and I can tell you that in those last 2 rows, there were maybe 2 cars there. So there's plenty of space in the Hudson Street lot if you're looking for spaces. For those who pay by Park Mobile, Cottage Place has open spots to be able to park there. And then I just want to also remind everyone, parking in all village-owned parking lots after 3 p.m. does not require a permit. Time restrictions, which is a maximum of 3 hours, and parking fees are still in effect.
All right, move on to council reports. Councilman Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, Saturday, May 18th is a styrofoam drive in the parking lot of Graden Pool. No lights required because it's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you have styrofoam from birthday presents, Christmas presents, in your garage, wherever, bring it down, we'll recycle it and take it off your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you. So we had a meeting the other morning with village staff for the Ridgewood 4th of July event, and so we're almost there, believe it or not. The days go by quickly. Just as a reminder to visit ridgewoodjuly4th.net and consider making a donation to help save the tradition, as we all have enjoyed it for so many years. I think we're on the 119th anniversary for the 4th of July. The next item is the HPC will meet downstairs in the garden room tomorrow night at 8 p.m. The Master Plan Subcommittee is concluding the visioning survey effective tonight at about 8 p.m. We had an amazing response to the survey, well over 2,000 respondents, which is just an amazing number. We will calculate those surveys. Our visioning consultant will do that, and that will become the basis for the future master plan, and we will start to schedule little meetings and charrettes and programs so that we can have a different type of community conversation. So I think we're at a 22 to 23% response rate from the adults in Ridgewood, and so we're really actually quite happy with that number. We exceeded what typical responses would be for other municipalities. Let's see, what else? Let me just see one last. Okay, and the 125th Anniversary Celebration Committee. The group met Monday evening, right downstairs in the garden room again, and we continue to look for volunteers to come and meet with us. We're meeting again next Monday at 6:30 p.m., again in the garden room, and everyone is welcome to help organize the events for the 125th anniversary of the Village of Ridgewood. The committee is actually planning the village events, albeit the other groups in town can plan events that are around the 125th anniversary. For instance, any sidewalk sale could be organized by the Chamber of Commerce to be the 125th anniversary of Village of Ridgewood sidewalk sale. But the events we are focused on are strictly those that will be run by this committee and the Village of Ridgewood. So some of the ideas from committee members for the weekend, looks like we're tentatively scheduled for October 4th, 5th, and 6th. We've confirmed that we're not in conflict with any other programs for that weekend. Some of the ideas floated were Friday night, 125th Anniversary Celebration Talent Show Extravaganza at the historic Cashel Memorial Band Shell. Saturday morning children's programs to include historic games and crafts such as hoops, beanbag toss, fussy tussy, I think I have that one right, button strings, pin the tail on a donkey, apple stamps, and more. Let's see, Saturday library story time to incorporate historic stories about the Village of Ridgewood, and Saturday night with a gala event with a vintage photo booth. as one piece, one component of that, and then we're looking at the different logistics of having it either at historic Graydon, next to historic Stable, so we're really trying to keep that historic element into that, and possibly Sunday tours of different historic sites within the village, including Pease Library, the Stable, and the cemetery, along with others. So we've now broken out into smaller groups. That's really helpful for anyone to come, everyone to come and help with the organization of these events, the planning of these events. It's a huge undertaking, and the more people we have, the less the workload, the shared burden. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to start off with this past Saturday, I had the honor and pleasure to work with the American Legion at Vallow Cemetery, putting the flags in. We do it every year. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, volunteers, everybody was there. It was a fun time. The rain held off, but we still got a little bit wet, but all the flags are in. So I'm thankful that they organize that every year. And that was actually an Eagle Scout project, and it's in its 19th year. That's pretty interesting, right? Chamber of Commerce. So Chamber of Commerce, we have, next week we have Touch a Truck, which is going to be on the 16th. And then Ridgewood Sale Days, the spring sale days, which are going to be the 16th, 17th, and 18th. So we encourage everybody to go in and get some sale items down in the CBD. Year to date, there are 42 new members into the Chamber of Commerce. So that's an uptick from last year, the same year to date. And now I'm going to turn to the parking, which sometimes they joke it's the monthly parking meeting. So I'm going to start off with the kiosks. So there still seem to be challenges, and I talked to the village manager briefly about this today. There still seem to be some challenges with the kiosks. Individuals are still having challenges with using the kiosk. So the recommendation is to perhaps see if we can have maybe larger lettering or a more user-friendly signage for people to use it. It seems that individuals are getting frustrated with the kiosk. They are then just saying, forget it, I'm not going to fill it out, and then they are subsequently getting tickets because they are not putting their money into the kiosk or they're having trouble figuring it out. So I recommended that we maybe take a look and see how we can do better signage. The other challenge is that the kiosks apparently have been breaking down on a regular basis. So that not only affects our revenue, but it also is a challenge that people aren't really sure what to do if the kiosk is broken. Do they have to leave a note on their car? Do they have to, use Park Mobile? So there's confusion as to what to do when a kiosk is broken. The other thing that came up, and we're going to have to look into it in terms of the ordinance. So the ordinance for the kiosks, let me make sure I'm saying this right. The ordinance for the kiosks states that if you are in a zone, you are parking in the zone, you can repeat park. The way the ordinance is written, it is not prohibited to repeat park if you're paying on the kiosk in that zone. So we're going to have to either update the ordinance so that we can enforce repeat parking, or make some other sort of change to it so that we will be able to capture that issue. So that's one thing.
So it says repeat park beyond the 3 hour limit?
So
you can repeat park, you just can't park beyond the 3 hours. So
no, so when somebody pulls into a spot, if they're in the zone, they can stay in that spot. So they can virtually stay in that spot, whereas you pull out. So we have to look at the ordinance because apparently Ridgewood Police Department concurs with that and has had challenges in the court with people that are challenging it. So
yeah, what it is that like for Broad Street, that's all one zone. So feasibly, you could be working on Broad Street, go home for lunch, and then come back and find another space on Broad Street. Because it's all one zone, when it goes to court, the judge says, well, it's possible that they came and left and then came back. So there are different ways to address that, and so we're going to look at that and bring something to you probably either at our May 22nd or our June 5th, I think it is, work session to discuss that.
Okay.
No, but I mean, that should be pretty simple. We have kiosks on both sides to make each side a zone.
Right now, that's not what it is. It's possible. I mean, we could do something like that.
Yeah, but in other words, if I went shopping in the morning and then left and then said, oh wait, I forgot to get Bernadette a birthday present, and I ran back out and parked in that same vicinity.
Right.
That's not
ticket.
Yeah, but
Right,
technically
and that's what
not,
the judge is saying.
That's not repeat
That's
parking.
not repeat parking.
The repeat
right.
parking means you're in the space, and
But
you
there's
don't.
no way to, so
Right
unless
now, they're not
unless our
numbered.
parking enforcement officer is standing there and watching the car and making sure that it's moving, actually moving,
Right.
then that person can theoretically say, oh, I went around the block, and the spot was open again, I pulled right into the same spot, and since you didn't see it, I can still park in that spot.
So it would always require a look back.
So it's a glitch, yeah, so it's a glitch in the ordinance that we just need to refine. Best way to say it. The other thing is, the kiosk, the challenge they're having with the kiosk is individuals either don't remember their license plate number, are putting their license plate numbers in incorrectly, or are, again, just not feeding the kiosk because they don't want to have to walk all the way back to their car to get their license plate number to come all the way back. So the suggestion, actually, that came from our parking enforcement officer was to number the spots, because in most towns you go by the spot number, and it would be a lot easier to say I'm in spot 28 and so that's another, suggestion that was made. I did bring up the suggestion of taking the employee spaces, because I observed this weekend on one of the busiest days, a beautiful Saturday afternoon, the entire employee lot in Cottage was empty the majority of the day. So that's a loss in revenue for us. It is a frustration for people that are trying to shop. The chamber did not feel at this point that we should take those spaces from the employees, because they feel with the increased enforcement and some changes to the ordinance and the making sure the kiosks are working, that would be a positive thing, and it would get people to those spots. So I told them I would bring it to the council to let you guys know. My recommendation this morning was that we just take the employee spots because they're just sitting vacant. We already did do the flex spots. Those are full. The other employee spots are just sitting vacant. Hudson Street, where we made that change, those are now full, and the other spots are vacant. And I know that the village manager was up there today, and she saw that. So that is just a general comment to you guys that, I think we're going to see how it goes in the next few weeks, and then maybe come back in another month and make some changes. We already had talked about it in the meeting, and then just subsequently when we walked outside, the parking enforcement officer was out giving tickets. So I'm going to do a ride-along with the parking enforcement officer on Friday. I would encourage all the council to do the same, because there are lots of different challenges that maybe you have to see from her point of view, as to how the tickets are given, what tickets are given. A lot of the tickets are because of the kiosk.
So let me just mention, I did speak to the chief. She's willing to have that happen. You can make an appointment with Sergeant J. Chuck to ride along or walk along with our full-time PEO. And he recommended it be like a Thursday or Friday. You could certainly go on another day of the week, but like a Monday, Tuesday, it's very quiet.
No, we're going to do it on Friday.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in general, for the rest of the council members, when they sign up with Sergeant Chuck, he recommended a Thursday, Friday, just because it is busier in the CBD on those days.
Yeah. So just as an aside, Our meeting lasted a little longer, so it was 10:15 when we ran into her, and she had already given out 18 tickets.
Ooh.
So 10:15 and 18 tickets were already given.
What were the tickets for? Just a key, for where? For what?
People didn't know how to use the kiosk, and they just ran in for a cup of coffee and
But
came back out, and they had
But the
tickets.
Chamber of Commerce meeting is on Chestnut, no?
Yeah, she was making her way down. I ran into her. She had,
Oh, okay, so she
had
wasn't
been on
handing out,
Broad,
they
made her
weren't
way
there
down,
where you were.
and
Got
was
it.
giving
Understood.
tickets on
Understood.
Chestnut.
Got it.
So that's really all I had with the chamber. The only other thing that the chamber, a comment was made at the chamber that 80% of the individuals coming into the CBD are outside of our community, and they wanted to know if the visioning survey took that into account and how broad of a sampling do you have? Because if shoppers are coming in and are outside, would it have been valuable to you to have those opinions as well in the visioning process? So that was
the point of meeting with the business owners, for them to relay whatever these councilors are sharing with them, right? I mean, that was the point.
So
We can't go out to, I talked to some of the guys who own restaurants who say they have customers that come from New York State.
Right.
The outreach for us to go and kind of bring in the viewpoint of any, and that was the point of having the businesses, having the roundtables with the businesses for them to come in and tell us what are the challenges, what are they hearing from their customers. And I think a lot of the stuff came out. I think, obviously parking was an issue. But just one question about the ride-alongs.
Yeah.
Is the purpose of the ride-alongs for the parking enforcement officers to convey to us the challenges they're facing in handing out tickets?
I think it's twofold. It's for us to get an understanding of what's happening, like, at the different locations, and the challenges they're having with people's understanding. Because, so for instance, this morning, the majority of the tickets were because people either didn't even attempt to go to the kiosk. They thought they were going to beat the meter by just running in and out. So the complaint was, I used to come out to get my coffee, and I'd throw my quarter in, I'd get my coffee. It would take me 2 minutes, I'd come back out, I was in my car and gone. Now, I have to get out of my car, walk to the end of the street, do the kiosk, come back and do it, So again, it's more of to walk with her and get the input from the people that are having the comments. So
that's different. That's not a challenge of the parking enforcement officer. That's somebody who's saying, I'm going to roll the dice.
No, she did. No, but it's more for us to kind of have, the experience of what these people, because I can tell you guys the experience. I've stood behind people on the kiosk just to listen to their comments, and the majority of them that I've seen so far, they're all forgetting their license plate number. And then there's like, to heck with it, and they walk off. And I'm like, no, you're going to get a ticket. Come here, come back.
Huh.
And but so it's happening. And then, like I said, if the kiosk is broken, then what? You have to go to Park Mobile. And then, of course, I've been using Park Mobile, and there was a challenge I had a couple of months ago with Park Mobile, and I went to kind of prove a point this morning, and of course, Park Mobile glitched out, and I could have parked for 8 hours on the street. So that definitely, I know that we've talked about it, it has to be fixed. Because for whatever reason, it shouldn't be doing that. It shouldn't be letting me extend. It shouldn't be letting me do those things. So we have to work with Park. This is the second time it's let me. I mean, I've only done it. So
can I just answer the question about the businesses looking to their customers that don't live in Ridgewood? The survey was set up actually in that outreach to include individuals. It states right here, I don't live or work in the village, but visit often. So in that first couple of questions, establishing demographics, the question is there, and that was part of the outreach to the business community and to anyone else to say it's village residents.
So you'll have that statistic, though. So if they mark that box, you'll have that statistic for them.
Right, we'll know, but that was part, like as the mayor said, that was part of the reason reaching out for the business community, for the Chamber of Commerce, for the Guild, was to say, send this out into the world, because if that is your customer base that's not in Ridgewood, we want to hear from those folks, and that hence that last question that you visit the village.
Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilman Boyd?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report, all right. Well, actually, I had a very long week, long enough that I had to write some notes. So, Wednesday, May 1st, I attended the Ridgecrest Ice Cream Social, celebrating the 35th anniversary of Ridgecrest. The ice cream for the event was donated by Ben & Jerry's, so thank you to Sybil for continuing to be a wonderful community partner to Ridgecrest. I had the opportunity to tour the new Serenity Garden that was built really from within the existing garden by the residents. They really cleaned up the area and made it a really, really nice, lovely place. Board members Rich Barkley and Glenn Houck were in attendance. Jim Thebbery from Bergen County presented proclamations from the county executive and the board of chosen freeholders. It was just a really, really nice event. And every time I go in there, there's something new, something that's been added to improve the life of the residents, and it's one of my favorite places to visit. Also on May 1st, I attended the 33rd Annual Holocaust Remembrance Service, sponsored by Ridgewood's Interfaith Clergy Council. It was held at Westside Presbyterian Church. The speaker was Rabbi Noam Marans, who works in interfaith relations now on an international level, but used to be Rabbi of Temple Israel when the service was founded. And Rabbi Marans was introduced by Monsignor Rosniak from Our Lady of Mount Carmel, who is, by the way, the only clergy still in Ridgewood who was here when Rabbi Marans was. I read a proclamation from the village. Freeholder Tracy Zur also attended and shared her family's story. It was a very personal story about her family's experience with the Holocaust. We heard beautiful music from the village school's choir. It was a very moving service, you know, and these types of services of coming together are so important, especially because just a week before there had been yet another attack on another house of worship. So the Yom HaShoah, or Day of Remembrance, really ensures not only that we remember the victims, but that they're given the dignity which they were denied at death. Very moving service, and I was very fortunate to have been there. Friday, May 3rd, I got to be the MC at the Ridgewood Art Institute's 67th Annual Sponsor Show. This is their most popular annual event and the biggest fundraiser. At this show, the sponsors have an opportunity to acquire a beautifully framed original painting from the collection donated by the Institute's artists and instructors, and some of the artists were there on hand to take pictures with the sponsors who took away the paintings. Had the honor of drawing the names of the sponsors randomly to choose their favorite painting. And for the opportunity and for putting the event together, I'd like to thank the team at the Institute, Barbara Johansson, Elena Taylor, and of course the Institute's president, Carl Holst. On Saturday, May 4th, I was at the New Jersey AIDS Walk at the Duck Pond. I want to thank Ray Welsh with Buddies of New Jersey for making the event possible, and really thankful for everybody who showed up and came out on a very messy and rainy day. It was really nasty weather, but it was for a great cause. Again, Freeholder Tracy Zur was there, and we also had Assemblywoman Lisa Swain, Assemblyman Chris Tully. Funds were raised for HIV services and prevention, and most importantly, the event raised awareness, and awareness is so important, particularly when it comes to prevention. I remember growing up in the 80s when there was very little understanding of the disease. There was a lot of stigma and paranoia, and to see how far the science has come and the awareness has come is tremendous, and this is because of the work that Buddies of New Jersey do. For anyone not familiar with Buddies of New Jersey, they help a lot of people in Bergen and Passaic counties, whether it be through medical services, counseling, transportation, dental services, food bank, case management. They also work with corporate sponsors and drug companies to provide affordable treatment to AIDS, HIV patients. There are over 1 million people who are living with HIV and AIDS in the U.S. And with all the advances that we've seen in treatments, what's tremendous is that it's no longer a death sentence. And now they're finding ways for folks to be able to survive and live with the disease. But what was really tremendous when you speak to the folks at Buddies of New Jersey, HIV and AIDS is the only diseases where the folks who are working on the field are really living also the disease, much more than any other types of diseases. So, what they're saying is, look, if there was really a cure, we would have known. We would know by now, and you would have to kill us for us to keep that from the public. But it was really tremendous, and to see everybody come together for the event, it was great. Just an announcement, got word from Rite Aid in Ridgewood, for folks who are concerned about the measles vaccine. They have just received a large shipment of measles vaccines, and so they're welcoming everybody to stop by and pick up a shot, or they're also looking to set up clinics to kind of go out. The clinics have to be a little bit more planned ahead of time, because unlike the flu vaccine, these things don't survive very well unless it's under very low temperature. And that is all that I have. Oh, and CBDAC will meet tomorrow in the garden room at 8:30 a.m.
And I just have two more quick announcements. One is the Chamber of Commerce is having their annual spring sidewalk sale on May 16th, 17th, and 18th. And Touch a Truck event, which is an annual event co-sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce and the Village of Ridgewood, will be held at the Van Ness Square on Thursday, May 16th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., weather permitting. The event is free. Vehicles of all sizes will be available for children to inspect. It's a very fun event for children. So moving on, ordinances for Ridgewood Water, we don't have any. Resolutions, the following resolutions, number 19-131 through 19-132, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. They will be read by title only. Award contract under state contract, service contract for maintenance of chlorine, pH, and phosphate analyzers. Award professional services contract, PFAS treatment feasibility study, 20 treatment facilities. May I have a motion?
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
Ordinances.
I move the first reading of ordinance 3722.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes, so ordered. Would the clerk please read ordinance 3722 by title?
An ordinance adding a new section to the Code of the Village of Ridgewood entitled Single-Use Plastic Bag Reduction.
I move that ordinance 3722 be adopted on first reading and that June 12, 2019 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3720 by title on second reading, that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3720?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood fees at Section 145-4, departmental fees.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton. Yes. Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3720 be adopted on second reading and final publication is required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3721 by title on second reading, that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3721?
An ordinance to amend Article 8 of Chapter 212 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Parks and Recreation Areas, at Article 7, Section 212-29, dogs.
The Village Council discussed ordinance 3721 at the April 24, 2019 work session, and unanimously agreed that North Road Park will be added to Section C, permitting dogs on a leash, no longer than 6 feet in length, with an adequate collar. I will take a motion to amend ordinance 3721 to include North Park in Section C of ordinance 3721.
I move that ordinance 3721 be amended to include North Road Park in Section C of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, so this is for the amendment. Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. The public hearing on ordinance 3721 as amended is now open.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. First, I'd like to say I fully support the amended ordinance, And I'm very appreciative of the council moving forward with this, regardless of the seemingly numerous roadblocks that somehow or another got put in your way. As you know, when you initially introduced the ordinance, the copy that you introduced was different than what you had discussed. Somehow that mysteriously happened, and I'm very appreciative that you corrected it that night. I was somewhat shocked that somebody who is employed by the village, who doesn't live in the village, showed up here last time and made some negative comments about the ordinance. I don't know how that person showed up, whether she was called and was asked to be here and speak against it, but I was very disappointed that somebody who was under contract and is paid by the village of Ridgewood came and made negative comments about your intent in moving forward with this ordinance. Didn't appreciate that at all, and I'm hoping that there is some investigation on your part to find out whether that person was asked to be here by an employee or not. And it seemingly the last roadblock was that you were given some incorrect information about North Road Park, that it was landlocked and there was no way to get to it unless you crossed private property. I'm appreciative that Deputy Mayor Knudsen went out and personally looked at the property to determine that in fact it was not landlocked and you can easily get into it, and that is now a park that, if this ordinance passes tonight, we will be able to take our dogs into, provided they're on a 6-foot leash. So again, seemingly numerous obstacles were thrown in your way with this. I'm appreciative that you moved forward despite those obstacles, corrected things immediately, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to take my dog into parks that I'm currently not allowed to take my dog into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second?
Hold on. Newton?
Yes.
Seaton? Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3721 as amended be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second?
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton? Voigt?
I'm still concerned about having dogs on leashes at Veterans Field Path. I'm just concerned that's an accident waiting to happen, so my vote's no.
Okay. And Hache?
Yes.
The following resolutions, numbered 19-133 through 19-151, with the exception of Resolution 19-139, which will be read in full and considered separately, and 19-148, which has been removed from the agenda, will be adopted by consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. Each resolution will be read by title only. Title 59, approval, resurfacing of tennis courts. Award contract, resurfacing of tennis courts, North Monroe and Bel Air courts. Title 59, approval, bus transportation services, day camp. Award contract, bus transportation services, day camp. Title 59, approval, horticultural supplies. Award contract, horticultural supplies. Title 59, approval, train station parking lot and Engine 31 driveway. Oh, I'm sorry. That's off the consent. I apologize. Award contract, fire engine 31 driveway resurfacing. Authorized change order, sewer line grouting, Demarest pump station. Authorized change order, Demarest pump station and Graydon Park storm sewers. Authorized execution of declaration of interest form, shared services agreement with Bergen County, technical assistance for floodplain acquisition plans and floodplain restoration planning services. Authorized approval of Bergen County Open Space Trust Fund grant contract, Kings Pond Improvement Project Phase 2, opposed Vegetative Management Response Act bills, conform endorsement of community development project and use of home funds, supportive housing through BCUW Madeline Housing Partners, LLC at the Enclave, authorized mailing of estimated 2019 third quarter tax bills, appoint municipal recycling coordinator, appoint members to Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Board, and appoint members to Stigma-Free Task Force. May I have a motion?
So moved. Sorry, I lost my voice.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton? Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
Okay, now I have Resolution 19-139. Be resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the bid documents and specifications specifically titled Train Station Parking Expansion and Engine 31 Driveway in the Village of Ridgewood, prepared by the Village of Ridgewood Department of Public Works Engineering Division, being is hereby approved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood. This resolution is adopted pursuant to the authority of NJSA 59:4-6. So is there discussion on this?
I'm just gonna, well, we can vote on it, and I'll just say, there's no discussion, just I'll give my reason why I'm saying no. That's
Okay,
fine.
may I have a motion then?
Second.
Okay. Newton?
You know, I'd like to hear the reason that somebody's kind of
Okay.
voting no in the
Okay.
context of a discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this has to do with the train station parking lot. I've been against it the whole time. I mean, it has to do with the fact that we chopped down all these trees and we've ruined a pocket park, so that's why I'm against it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Seaton? Yes. Voigt?
No.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we go to, back to comments from the public, not to exceed 5 minutes per person.
Again, Rorik Halaby. I was just thinking of Ms. Walsh's comments about the parking. I really think this kiosk idea should just be, how should I say it? Let's go back to the drawing board, take it off the table, dump it wherever you put the valet parking plan, because that thing just does not make sense. I have no idea why we're doing it, and I'm open-minded. If I'm wrong, please tell me. I mean, my favorite eatery in Ridgewood is the Bagelicious, and the idea of just parking and putting in 25 cents and going in, and now you have to go out. I mean, I use my Park mobile, which works perfectly. But then you're paying 45 cents more. You know, we're being taxed. And I have no idea why we ever introduced this parking kiosk. I mean, I'd love to hear from someone to tell me why we did it. So when the thing is over, let's just get rid of it, go back to parking meters and Park Mobile, which works perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
Anybody else? Public comments?
I just have a question for the village manager.
Oh, sure.
So, have we had any complaints, any email complaints, or any complaints from the police department, the PEOs, or anyone, any complaints about the kiosks?
I have not had any email complaints. I had, I think, one call about not knowing exactly what they were supposed to do. But the only thing I know is that the PEOs have mentioned, so I've spoken to Sergeant Chuck, who supervises them, and he's mentioned that they find that people have sometimes, they're confused sometimes as to how to proceed. But, you know, we're looking into, I just want to let you know, through Calais, the provider, they may have a more intuitive type of kiosk, apparently. So when Mr. Rooney returns to work, we'll take a look at that and see if it's, you know, possible to maybe make it easier. I don't know what the new product would be, so certainly we'd bring it to the council if we decide to do this. But I really personally, I've had minimal complaints.
And the question of whether or not they're broken down, not operating, anything like that?
Well, I checked today when Councilwoman Walsh mentioned this to me briefly when we had a conversation today. I did check with our traffic and signal department. And what he mentioned to me is it may be down for something like 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes they run out of the receipts. And so then they have to put new paper into the, or sometimes it's jammed, as the parking meters sometimes get jammed.
Right.
You know, there's something put in there, and then they have to clear it. But it's not, he said it's not very often, and it's usually cleared within an hour, you know, as long as they can send someone to fix it. So that's what I found out from talking to him today.
Thank you.
So just to answer the question that was posed as to why we went with the kiosks, the old technology that we have currently, which is the old standard meters with the quarters, That's very old technology. Our signal department has worked miracles in trying to patch up the best way they can, because for a lot of these meters, they don't even make the parts anymore. So we're basically creating our own parts to make them work. The other challenge that we had with the old meters was that they basically have a little cup at the bottom. And the moment that we increase the parking rates from 50 cents an hour to 75, that cup is now filled up as, in half the time as it was before. So we require much more this manual intervention in the collection and so on. The other reason why a lot of municipalities have moved towards these types of systems, because there are systems, is to have less sort of interaction of human hands with money as we're collecting out of these machines. It gives you a better way to track and monitor what the actual revenue is. Unfortunately, when they break, we lose the revenue. But that was one of the reasons why. And also in terms of looking at the cost. So to replace all the individual meter heads in town, if we take North Broad Street as an example, you could basically, with 2 kiosks, and arguably we could maybe add more to the streets so the walking distance is shorter. But to replace just the meters that we have now, which is old technology, I believe is about $1,400 a meter. So if you're taking out 30 to 40 meters in one block with a machine, I think it's costing us, what, $13,000 for the kiosk. It's a lot more cost efficient to do that. And then from a revenue standpoint, that's not the main reason why, but it increases the efficiency of collecting the revenues, because the time starts every time a car pulls out. You don't find the sort of meter that's been fed and that you stumble upon. But those are the reasons why we looked at it. It's worked really well in other municipalities, particularly in cities. When you go into Hoboken, it's similar technology. When you look at the kiosks that are in New York City, which is maybe 2 or 3 generations ago, those things, it's difficult to see. The screens are very bright. But, you use them enough, and I guess the fear of getting $100-something ticket in New York really sharpens up your senses as to how to best use them. But those old systems require you to print out a little receipt, go back to your car, put the receipt on the dashboard so the parking enforcement officer can see that you've paid for it, which is the other reason why the kiosks really work well versus a meter, is that if we move forward with this license plate reader technology, it's easier for parking enforcement because we do it by zones and not by individual spots. So we close public comments, and I'll take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on May 8th, 2019, 8 o'clock p.m. or soon thereafter, as the matter on the agenda can be reached. And that said closed session be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include central dispatch services. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 And be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion? May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.